of the sector. Notwithstanding, there are challenges also to promote the sustainability of the tourism sector. And that is why during the first session, we will be focusing on looking at sustainable tourism in terms of looking at two sides of the same coin, in the sense that on the one hand, we have green tourism, which must be upscaled, but which must also take into consideration economically viable models. While on the other hand, we've got the transformation of the more mass tourism kind of traditional models. And we are obviously of the understanding that innovation here plays a very key and important role in the sustainability of the sector. And therefore, we will be focusing quite a lot throughout the webinar on the role of innovation, on the importance of the acceleration of innovation and skills, for example, diversification of the tourism products, as well as fostering the enabling conditions. With that, I would like to introduce first, as part of our introduction, two important speakers that we have with us from the European Commission, Mr. Manuel Pleguezuelo Alonso from DG Mare and Ms. El Fakir from DG Growth, who will provide us with an introduction. After that, we will have a roundtable discussion, which will be moderated by Matteo from the WestMED on two sides of the same coin, following which we will have a discussion on the sustainable transition of the sector by focusing on two main elements. The first is the handbook, which is currently being developed by the UFM and CPMR. And the second presentation, we will have a dedicated session on the EMFAF call and its objectives. So with that, I'd like to leave the floor to Mr. Alonso and Ms. Kere, who could kindly provide us with a brief introduction to the webinar.
Many thanks, Stephanie. I take the floor from DG Mare. Thanks and welcome you all. Well, we are going to talk about tourism again in the WestMed framework, and from the blue economy side, we can see that it has been one of the main traditional sectors, but it's also one of the innovative or emergent one if we consider from a diversification perspective. If we consider the need for eco-solutions, for smart, digital, sustainable solutions, decarbonized for all the year offered. So it comes from the traditional maritime sectors, but it has a huge potential related to innovation, which is one of the main topics of this event. Regarding WestMed initiative, the goal to smart and resilient blue economy includes embedded in the priority of production and consumption from a sustainable side. The tourism sector is also clearly included, but also linked with other priorities such as blue skills, research and innovation. Maritime special planning must recognize and consider the role of this coastal activity, and also the preservation of marine habitat. Regarding the ongoing works of this initiative, this WestMed initiative, we have to consider the previous hackathons and events that we have already developed on this regard, identifying an accelerator and observatory as potential ideas that I hope you're going to discuss along this event today. But also beyond the WestMed, if we talk about the Union for the Mediterranean framework for the whole Mediterranean area, we need to consider and make reference to the UFM Ministerial Declaration on Blue Economy issued last February, which counts on the tourism as a way to cooperate, promote political coordination, also a stakeholders collaboration, and as a way to strengthen the resilience to go far from the COVID crisis. So for the recovery as a key tool, as a key sector for the recovery post-COVID pandemic. But also if we think that EU level, last May, a new communication on sustainable blue economy was issued. The main message, or the motto, is putting the blue in the green, so as part of the European Green Deal, and considering blue economy as a key solution from the recovery as well. And only it includes tourism, coastal resilience and biodiversity as a key sector as well for this transformation of the traditional blue economy value chains, as is for decarbonization, for circular economy, for food system, but including in this coastal resilient and biodiversity, tourism is especially refer in this sustainable blue economy communication that also refers not only EU side or EU territory, but the need to expand this sustainable approach for the blue economy. We don't talk about blue growth anymore. We talk about sustainable blue economy, and it needs to involve also three third countries, our neighbors countries with this approach, and we need to support, the European Union needs to share resources, territory, challenges, and support these neighbored countries. It links with the last joint communication of a renewed partnership with neighborhood policy, southern neighborhood countries, which also include blue economy as part of the European Green Deal. We talk about blue economy when talking about sustainable economy, connected economy, and this green transition. So we think that with this political framework, it's a clear opportunity, the momentum, keep the momentum of the programming period, also for non-EU countries, because there's also the programming of the neighborhood policy funds. But regarding EU countries, not only cohesion policy funds, but also the European Maritime and Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund programming exercise to include expressly blue economy sectors, diversified blue economy, including tourism, given that tourism accounts for the Med area more than 70% of the blue economy jobs, according to the blue economy report that the DG Mare published every year. And regarding as well that tourism has been especially affected after the climate change effects and also the COVID-19 crisis. So for finalize the role of sea basin strategies, such as the WestMED initiative, it's key for this territorial cooperation. I hope that the information about the recent call, that it's included not only EU countries, but also non-EU countries, and that my colleague from CINEA will explain later on. And recalling as well that we will have the stakeholders conference of the WestMed initiative next Tuesday. And I hope that you can join as well, because it's streamed and there's a participation online possibility. I wish you a fruitful discussion, and we keep at your disposal for further information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alonso. And Ms. Carrier?
Yes, thank you very much. I hope you can see me and hear me. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much to Stephanie and the WestMed Blue Economy Initiative for inviting DG Grow to the Sustainable Tourism Innovation webinar today. So I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to provide you with a quick update on the challenges we are trying to address at the moment in DG Grow, not only for the coastal and maritime tourism sector, but the tourism sector as a whole. Um, as the previous speakers just highlighted, it is really a critical time, not only in Europe, but globally for the tourism sector. And as we all very well know, the decrease in tourism revenues by 70% worldwide during the COVID-19 pandemic last year resulted in a number of significant challenges for the recovery of the sector. There are currently 11 million jobs under threat. The attractiveness of the sector is suffering as well, as many people have left their jobs during the pandemic and did not return. And this has led to labor shortages in many of the tourism subsectors. Reskilling and upskilling the tourism workforce on all levels is also critical for improving the resilience of the sector. For coastal and maritime tourism in particular, which is representing over half of the blue economy, is a key pillar. Over half of EU's tourist accommodations are located in coastal areas, and nearly 1/3 of overnight stays are at beach resorts. So the potential for the recovery in the transformation of European tourism is really, really important. Coastal destinations are also the most popular choices for European travelers. On the other hand, the pandemic did reveal that coastal communities and tourism businesses are particularly vulnerable. Some are relying exclusively on tourism and on seasonal activity, and most are also exposed to the severe consequences of climate change, as we all know. So, what are we doing now to help the recovery of the sector? As my colleague had mentioned, some financial instruments. There are also state aids, the SHORE program, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, and other instruments that have been leveraged in order to support the twin green and digital transitions of the tourism sector. For medium and long-term recovery, the Commission has in fact just completed its consultation with a wide variety of stakeholders to co-create the tourism transition pathway, which proposes a number of scenarios and concrete actions to transform the ecosystem. And this process involved an online consultation of all interested stakeholders over the summer, followed by a number of workshops dedicated to defining specific actions in the areas of sustainability, digitalization, and resilience. There were, in fact, a number of coastal and maritime tourism stakeholders that were actively involved in supporting this process. So now the co-created transition pathway is being finalized, and it will be discussed later this month with tourism ministers, and it will be formally presented under the French presidency early next year in the context of the European Agenda for Tourism 2030-2050. Another initiative that I'm closely involved with is the Pact for Skills, which you may have heard of. It covers all 14 industrial ecosystems identified in the EU Industrial Strategy and is a flagship initiative under the European Skills Agenda. For tourism ecosystem, the industry is bringing together vocational and educational training providers, as well as tourism regions in Europe, to set up large-scale skills partnerships, which aim to upskill and reskill a large part of the tourism workforce in the medium to long term. And the focus of the upskilling will be on improving green, digital, and soft skills in order to achieve a resilient tourism ecosystem. This is, of course, in respect to the European Green Deal and the digital decade. And the skills partnerships will be financed through a combination of EU funds, such as the ESF Plus, Erasmus Plus, the Recovery and Resilience Facility I mentioned, and also private investment. More details on how you can join the Pact for Skills and sign up to its charter can be found on the Europa website. We are very keen on regions joining because they will be very critical in these skills partnerships. So I encourage you to participate in the initiative either through your regions or through the ongoing work at European level. So I thank you very much for your attention, and I very much look forward to learning more today about the state of the art of green and sustainable tourism across the WestMed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kere. I will now leave the floor to Matteo, who will be moderating the session on two sides of the same coin.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Steph. Yeah, so what we want to do now is having a bit of a discussion at high level, thinking together about the relation between the two components of sustainable tourism. I'm saying that as what we, in discussion with our partners and based on previous webinar, as Manuel was introducing, that often comes this as a refrain, the fact that destination, let's say, or stakeholder in the sector feel that they belong in one of these two categories, either like a more locally specific, actually a bit a niche green destination, or larger potentially dynamic tourism destination that might suffer with the need to reposition from kind of this mass tourism that we all want to shy away from with very good reasons for. and try to accelerate this repositioning towards sustainable tourism destination. And obviously, in the context of COVID, there's been a lot of pressure on both. There's been a lot of pressure on the kind of larger tourism attraction destination, but also there was a lot of pressure on green areas and maybe local green areas due to many local tourism visitors maybe accessing those and having a potential negative impact. So what we want to really discuss in this session is whether these two elements of sustainable destination, kind of a green tourism destination and kind of reconversion of larger mass tourism destination, whether maybe they're not two sides of the same coin, whether maybe they're actually, there's a kind of a leveraging of the two, whether a green destination might upscale a bit and get mainstream, whether mass tourist destination might look at greener sustainable green destination to understand how to reposition themselves. So maybe these two type of destination are actually simply two starting point from a common mid-ground, which is what we call two sides of a coin. And I've spoken too much. I would like to hear our distinguished guest to elaborate about that. And again, we welcome a slide presentation. Let us know if you prefer to run it yourself, and feel free to share a screen, or our colleague can help you with that. So we have gathered basically a couple of very relevant international organizations. Josep Rodriguez is member through the Diputació Barcelona of the Next Tour organization. Next Tour is clearly one of the, if not the, leading association for tourist destination in Europe. And Mauro Randone, Mauro is project manager in the Mediterranean for WWF, also together with IUC, and they really work a lot in sustainable green destination. If I might say, Next Tour maybe work a little bit more with larger European destination. Mauro with WWF, they maybe have more experience in dealing with Northern Africa, Southern Mediterranean challenges really for that. But the idea is to have an exchange between these two destinations, these two players, on whether really their experience, their challenge and opportunities ahead for green destination or for repositioning mass tourism destination, and whether they think that these two type of sustainable tourism are actually so different, or they can maybe converge. And then we would like to bring in national practice. We asked Daniela Maritza from Malta Tourism Authority. We asked Mohamed Belhajjal from the Ministry of Tourism in Tunisia, and Chantal Bevnik from Natural Greece, which is not in the WestMED clearly, but we think it could be a very interesting viewpoint. She will explain what she do. I'm afraid, for what I can see, that the Mauritanian colleague might have had issue in connecting, but if in the meanwhile Lemhaba or Yarba is also between us, you can knock our door and jump in. So without much ado, I will maybe start with Joseph and then Mauro to exchange about that, and then I will call other national practice to build on that, bring in their own expertise. So please, Joseph.
Okay, thank you, Matteo, and thank you on behalf of Next Tour and Barcelona Provincial Council for the opportunity to participate in this debate. Let me share my screen with a brief presentation I have prepared. Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, so just a couple of slides just to introduce who we are. As you know, we are the lead partners of the MED Sustainable Tourist Community. It is a community that is bringing together 30 projects dealing with sustainable tourism and funded by the Interreg program. It's a big investment of the European Union with almost 50 million euros of the ERDF, and it's bringing together more than 200 partners in the Mediterranean North Shore. And these the projects of the community are dealing with these main topics that you see here, trying to diversify the tourist offer, address the tourist pressures, and also to improve the management and planning practices. Those projects have developed a lot of methodologies, tools, solutions, innovative solutions in trying to deal with the problems of sustainable tourism in the Mediterranean. Here there is a list. I will go into detail because today during the session you will see some examples of some of projects of our community, concretely in Circle, WestMED, Edit Data, and Coel.
May I ask everybody else to mute, please, because we're already experiencing some line disturbance. Please, Josep, go on.
Okay. Well, just going to the question you proposed for this debate, it's a difficult question because when we talk about tourism in the Mediterranean, we cannot talk about an homogeneous reality. It is a very fragmented sector in terms of public and private stakeholders involved in the sector. It is not the same reality of the small and big countries. The level of decentralization, it's quite different. And also when we talk about the tourist offer in the Mediterranean, it is true that there is a big amount of tourist offer, maybe focus on mass tourism, but we have many tourist modalities refer to, for instance, cultural tourism, wine tourism, ecotourism, and things like that. So besides the sun and beach in the Mediterranean, we have a very wide offer. I'm thinking also about urban tourism and so on. So it's quite difficult to answer to this question, but I would say that it's not the same. There are not two sides of the same coin because the share of the market of the mass tourism is much bigger than when we talk about the small destinations in the Mediterranean. However, when we talk about destinations, what we see is that they are facing similar challenges. If we have a look of some pre-COVID challenges in the Mediterranean, we see that we need to rejuvenate the mature destinations. We see problems of over-tourism, tourismophobia, seasonality, geographical concentration, economic dependence, and so on. And all destinations have started to work on some axes in order to face these challenges: in knowledge and innovation, in sustainability, in digitalization, in innovation in the development of the tourist offer, the tourist product, and also in the governance. But then the COVID arrived. So what we have seen, and in the introduction, you said that it was important to focus on what is happening now with the COVID situation. We see that there is an acceleration of these debates. So if we were talking about sustainability, we are talking more about sustainability at this moment. There is a new vector of health and security. So this, we have to take into account this vector because problems could happen again. So we have to take it into account. We have been an increasing interest of hinterland and interior destinations, not massified, but it has generated at the same time problems in the management of tourist flows. We have seen the importance of the local value chains and importance of the proximity tourism. And we have seen how important is the digitalization and how it has been accelerated during these pandemic times. And also the use we have to make for the management, the use we make for the big data and so on for the management. So for the future, why the sustainability should be taken into account in the recovery? I believe, first one, we are facing some global challenges in terms of mobility, geopolitics, digitalization, energy, and so on. So the tourism as a sector has to position itself in front of these new global challenges. So we cannot continue doing the things as we were doing in previous times. So we have to modify. And the second one, we see new challenges, and of course the climate change is the paradigm. We see what is happening these days in Glasgow. So we have seen with the COVID that we are vulnerable, and we have to think in the long term. And third one, I would say, we see that the environmental, the social and economy sustainability should be integrated along the whole value chains of the tourist sector. And we see an increasing demand from the market of all these values. Maybe this is a small demand at this moment, but we will see that this is increasing, not only for small green destinations, but also in all the destinations. So this should be included in all the value chains. And finally, it is a unique opportunity for changing the narrative of the destination, the storytelling of the destination. So as a summary, I would say, well, are not the same, the two sides of the same coin, but all destinations are facing the same challenges. And as a final remark, we as an Nextur, we make a declaration some years ago, and the motto, the lemma of this declaration was better places to live, better places to visit. So what do we mean? We mean that we have to make an integral, a global approach to what is happening in the destination, not only from the tourist point of view, but from the point of view of the local population, from the point of view of mobility, for all the impacts that the tourist activity is taking into the territory. So this is the approach that we would like to propose for the destinations.
Okay, thanks a lot, Joseph. Also, very good to set the ground for the discussion. I understand. So you say, okay, mass tourism destinations still have greater economic potential and maybe greater challenges, but the issues to face for both are similar. So Mauro, I mean, is this an issue? I mean, is it a challenge or an opportunity in terms of exchange of good practice, and why this transition in both cases, an acceleration of sustainable model are difficult to be achieved in EU, but maybe in Northern Africa. But I leave you to tell your story, but it would be good if you maybe reflect on that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Matteo. First, can you hear me, because I haven't tested the microphone. Wonderful. So yeah, as Matteo mentioned, I'm coordinating the Sustainable Blue Economy program of WWF in the region, and WWF is part of various projects on tourism. Well, of course, globally in the Mediterranean in particular. We are participating in the DestiMed and DestiMed Plus projects that many of you will probably have heard of, together with a number of partners, including Region Lazio, UCN, and CPMR. Some of them are present here today. I think the key point here is that essentially, we are trying to answer the same question. So how do we make tourism as a positive force for community, for climate, for the environment? And so, it is in a way two sides of the same coin, in my opinion. One thing that we are realizing with DestiMed Plus, for instance, is that a lot of the methodologies that we're developing can be really scaled up. So the point here is that the lessons learned from green tourism or ecotourism, for instance, can be really scaled up and taken up by destinations and mass tourism destinations as well. And I will explain a little bit more about what I mean. Well, the first point is that we started to really, in WestMED Plus, we are actually developing tour packages. We're testing them, we're calculating the ecological footprint, the social impact, the environmental impact as well, and the impact on resources. And you know, that's probably number one step. Like, you need to understand what your impact on the resources, what your footprint, what your carbon footprint, and what your ecological footprint is, in order to be able to move forward. Otherwise, you can pretend to be a green destination, but if you don't have a measurable way of demonstrating it, I'm sorry to say, but it's very close to greenwashing. So the opportunity is there. Then, you know, for these lessons learned to be transferred. I think Joseph mentioned it before. There's an issue in the Mediterranean with tourism. It's a very fragmented sector. So, you know, reaching out at the different level is obviously complex. At the same time, you know, we know that these best practices can be replicated. It's tough. It takes a long time, and it takes a lot of training and capacity building. Just to give you an idea, we work with local ITOs. We train them for years in our project to include some of these best practices in design of these packages, and in really paying attention to all the details concerning, for example, the way tourists move from one place to the other, or, for instance, what they eat, you know, how much meat you have in the menu. So if you really want to get to the details, that's the sort of details that we're talking about. And the during these days in which you know, the Glasgow COP is taking place, I think you know, each country is starting to think about the nationally determined contributions, and that's, you know, that's what's gonna that's the way to address them. You know, the sectors need to start thinking in this way. The other issue is that, and the constraint is that there's very limited planning at national level. So the strategies, the sustainable tourism strategies, are starting to emerge, but they're still not there. So that's the added complication. So I would summarize it into these key points. So first thing, the need to learn from each other. That's an essential point. The second point is the idea of you know, improving capacity building and you know, making local businesses grow, and SMEs. So we need to really train them and create and incubate also those businesses. Because very often these skills are lacking, and especially in our case, we realize this in North Africa is definitely an issue. So the need to establish incubators. We develop bankable projects, and that's what we call them in WWF globally. So the idea is to really accompany those businesses from the very beginning, to start thinking about, you know, the impact they're going to have, and to make sure that their business proposal it's appealing, but at the same time that they have a positive impact on the environment and on local communities. And this is a way of also involving the local communities and making sure that, you know, the benefits from tourism stays in the community and doesn't, you know, step out and go to multinationals. So yeah, that's and then the monitoring point is, of course, the point that I mentioned before. So without monitoring, you cannot really go anywhere else. And you know, green tourism can really teach a lot on all of these aspects. And so yeah, that's my main suggestion: learn more from each other and implement it.
You know, thanks a lot, Mauro. So you say, okay, you know, given all the differences, there's a lot that we're doing already, and maybe it's really a way to share and bring together knowledge and create a community. But you bring also this idea of bankability. So, you know, it's interesting because you start from the green destination point of view, but you say, well, actually, we might be actually interesting for investors, and and this is where the world is going, and green investors should really look at green destination, and green destination should discuss with more mass tourism one. So it's interesting to see what happens in this respect. What are the challenges and opportunities at the local level? So maybe Daniela from Malta Tourism Authority, if you want to bring in your point of view and say, okay, what are the opportunities and challenges maybe in what we've been discussing so far in actually building upon accessing other experiences or showcasing your own experiencing or even accessing to investment to boost all this process. Are you muted? I don't know if it's a strategy to avoid too many questions.
Okay.
Please.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me here. Well, I'm going to speak about Malta's experience. And if you could, we're a bit of a strange animal. You could say the universe conspired to make us as unsustainable as possible. We are an island nation. We are tiny. We have a huge population and we have very limited natural resources. But we have economic growth. So that is the perfect recipe for unsustainability, if you want to, if you can put it that way. Tourism is one of our main economic pillars, and it has been growing for the past 50 years. By 2019, we were reaching, I mean, very well, but we were breaking records every year when we were looking at arrivals. So tourist arrivals were increasing year and year and year. So even before the pandemic hit, we had already started discussing the need, to looking at becoming more sustainable, how to enhance our quality rather than our quantity. It was having an impact on the island's infrastructure, on our natural resources, on our cultural resources, even on the population. So the local population were feeling that burden. And then, of course, we had the pandemic, which just stopped everything, and it made us reevaluate what the situation was. And for the first time in many years, I mean, Malta has been speaking about sustainable tourism since 2007, but for the first time, we had the government, the tourism private sector, and academia all on the same page, where sustainability in tourism needed to come front and center. We really needed to start taking it seriously. Otherwise, there was no way that we were going to recover. And as a result of that discussion, the MTA, together with the Ministry for Tourism, designed a new tourism strategy for the next 10 years, which was focused on recover, rethink, and revitalize. Those were the three main aims that we focused on and that we need to focus on. And this way, our industry, the tourism industry, would, we would put it on sounder footing and we would make it more resilient. Why? Malta doesn't have any land links. We don't have domestic tourism because we're still small. We don't have proximity tourism. You still need to fly in. So we have all these challenges that need to be taken into consideration. And the main challenges that lie ahead are increasing the tourist spend per capita, focusing on quality tourism at all levels of the value chain, managing the expanding tourism sector and guiding our investors towards new tourism investment opportunities, and assisting the country in reaching its sustainability targets, especially climate-friendly travel by 2050, which is one of the targets that Malta and the tourism sector has decided to participate in. So through this strategy, Malta has taken the commitment of developing sustainability indicators specifically for our industry and taking into consideration our specificities as a country. And we are using, now as our ground zero. So this is ground zero. We only have to build up from there. And through a number of upcoming proposals, we will create these sustainability indicators, use peer reviews, and as the previous, as Mauro mentioned very well, learn from other countries and use best practices that are already there and maybe redefine them for our necessities, and develop a procedural mechanism within the national authorities that will ensure embedding these sustainability indicators and measuring sustainability in our tourism decision making and in our tourism project proposals. So I think what is the innovation within Malta at this particular point in time is this idea of change management, and where we want to implement change by internalizing, so to speak, the sustainability within our day-to-day procedures. And whilst some see it as, you know, two sides of the same coin, it's either one or the other, I see it more of a balancing act where you need to balance the two, because whilst mass tourism will always be there, because for the Mediterranean coast, we are in demand as a destination, but at the same time, by implementing more sustainability and, as Mauro said, really measuring our footprint, there is the possibility of balancing the two sides of the coin, so to speak. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Daniela. So yeah, really interesting, because it seems like you really are implementing what Mauro was advocating, and you make clear what Joseph was saying in terms of, I mean, you will still have mass tourism, but you need to find a way to really address that structurally. And you bring also this idea of the importance of investment for, you know, for sustainability, but also the importance of sustainable tourism for investors. And maybe it's something that we can touch upon with other speakers. I don't know what Mohamed, Mehdi, if you want to provide some insights from the Tunisian experience. I saw you were there. I don't know if you had some issue in connecting.
Oui, bonjour.
Oui, bonjour.
Oui,
Bonjour,
bonjour,
Mohamed.
très bien.
Oui, merci pour nous joindre. Et donc, c'est à vous d'expliquer un peu votre expérience en Tunisie et comment vous croyez que les deux composants de le tourisme sustentable, le grand tourisme de masse et les petites destinations vertes, ils sont importants à considérer par la Tunisie.
Je vais commencer tout d'abord par partager mon écran. Je ne sais pas si...
Votre volume, c'est pas trop génial. Si vous pouvez parler un peu plus fort ou augmenter votre niveau de volume dans le micro.
Là, est-ce que vous m'entendez bien?
Oui, c'est génial. Merci.
D'accord, ok. Donc, je vais essayer de partager mon écran. Je ne sais pas si vous recevez le partage ou pas.
Oui.
D'accord. Ok, donc, il ne faut pas cacher que 2020, elle a été la pire année jamais enregistrée dans l'histoire du tourisme, selon l'Organisation mondiale du tourisme, avec une chute des arrivées internationales de plus de 70%, hein, soit 1 milliard de touristes en moins, et une perte de 935 milliards de dollars de recettes touristiques, soit plus de 10 fois la perte enregistrée en 2009 suite à la crise économique mondiale. En Tunisie, par ailleurs, le secteur touristique avait connu une année remarquable en 2019, avec des performances records d'environ 9,5 millions d'arrivées internationales et plus de 6 millions de dinars tunisiens de recettes en devises et un premier trimestre 2020 promoteur. La Tunisie espérait poursuivre sa lancée, mais la crise sanitaire du Covid-19 a mis un terme aux prévisions enthousiastes d'atteindre, voire même de dépasser la barre des 10 millions de touristes en 2020. La dégradation de la situation sanitaire en Tunisie, ainsi que la progression rapide des variants à forte contamination dans les pays émetteurs au début de l'été, et les mesures restrictives en déroulant, nous ont obligés à revoir à la baisse toutes nos prévisions d'activité pour la saison estivale en cours. Et ce, malgré la mise à jour et l'application stricte du protocole sanitaire du tourisme tunisien. Toutefois, il importe de souligner que les entreprises touristiques tunisiennes ont fait jusqu'à présent preuve d'une forte résilience, grâce notamment au soutien de l'État et au désir de la Tunisie, qui demeure porteur d'espoir. Ainsi, pour initier et maintenir l'élan, la Tunisie s'est fixé 6 impératifs qui constituent le fondement de la stratégie du tourisme tunisien et des plans d'action en découlant. Donc, on parle de diversification, digitalisation, durabilité, qualité, formation et tourisme intérieur. Ces orientations stratégiques visent à assurer une transition touristique en permettant le passage d'un tourisme monoproduit à un tourisme à multiples visages, le développement du tourisme individuel et l'étalement de la saison touristique. Le tout pour améliorer l'attractivité et la compétitivité de la Tunisie. Donc, ces orientations visent aussi à assurer un redéploiement géographique des activités touristiques afin d'assurer un équilibre régional et atténuer le phénomène de saturation des zones littorales par une meilleure répartition des pressions des activités touristiques. Le tourisme étant l'une des plus grandes industries au monde, s'oriente peu à peu vers le tourisme durable, le tourisme vert, l'écotourisme. Selon l'Organisation mondiale du tourisme, l'écotourisme connaît une croissance annuelle aussi entre 10 et 15%, tandis que le tourisme conventionnel est à 4%. Ainsi, il est judicieux de créer une synergie entre les différents produits touristiques, permettant ainsi une plus grande diversification de l'offre pour une destination respectant l'environnement, ainsi que les autres enjeux économiques et sociaux de la région. Ainsi, le tourisme de plaisance est une des meilleures alternatives du tourisme durable. La Tunisie, qui occupe un emplacement stratégique au cœur de la Méditerranée, a une côte qui s'étale sur plus de 1300 km, 7 ports de plaisance, 0,7% de la capacité d'accueil en Méditerranée, moins de 1% de l'ensemble des bateaux sillonnant les mers et les océans ont rallié l'un des ports de plaisance tunisiens. Une capacité d'occupation actuelle des ports de plaisance tunisiens étant de 67%, dont 44% battant pavillon étranger. 2500 navires par an touchent l'un des ports de plaisance tunisiens, avec des activités diverses touristiques comptant plus de 200 bases nautiques, 60 navires de transport de personnes à titre onéreux, 125 centres de plongée, ainsi qu'une activité aussi industrielle liée au nautisme. On parle de 40 ateliers de fabrication et réparation des navires de pêche et de plaisance, 26 unités de construction des coques des navires de plaisance, 25 points de vente d'accastillage nautique et de motorisation, ainsi que 3 sociétés de fabrication de voiles. Malheureusement, le secteur, je parle du secteur de plaisance en Tunisie, demeure embryonnaire à cause d'une multitude de faiblesses, allant de l'absence d'un site d'ancrage majeur à l'image de services de faible qualité, en passant par les lourdes formalités douanières, policières et portuaires d'entrée et de sortie. Procédures complexes d'achat de bateaux, de concessions, des lourdes taxes, etc. Donc le tourisme de plaisance, pourtant générateur de recettes en devises, plus conséquentes que les revenus provenant du tourisme classique, il procure aussi de l'emploi direct et indirect et cible une gamme de clientèle que le tourisme national ne connaît pas encore au cœur de la Méditerranée. Le tourisme de plaisance présente un énorme potentiel pour l'économie bleue en Tunisie, une économie durable, d'où la nécessité d'une approche écosystémique de la planification de l'espace maritime et littoral, conciliant le développement des activités touristiques conventionnelles et émergentes, la qualité de la vie, la préservation des écosystèmes et le bon état écologique des milieux marins et littoraux. Ainsi, la stratégie sectorielle dans le domaine de la plaisance élaborée par le ministère du Tourisme repose sur 6 principaux secteurs. Donc, on parle des ports de plaisance, le premier atelier, les activités nautiques de plaisance, la veille juridique, la formation professionnelle, l'industrie nautique et le transport nautique touristique. Dans chacun de ces secteurs, la préservation de l'environnement représente un atout majeur pour la prolifération de l'activité. Ainsi, la mise à niveau des normes telles que le pavillon bleu et les certifications ISO pour les ports de plaisance est primordiale dans le cadre de l'amélioration de la qualité. On parle par exemple, l'ISO 9001 et le respect de l'environnement, du cadre environnemental ISO 14001. La mise à niveau des engins et des chantiers navals réduit aussi les risques de pollution ou d'incidents dans l'enceinte portuaire et améliore l'efficacité d'intervention lors de tels incidents. Les plans d'intervention et de lutte contre les calamités et les pollutions marines dans les ports de plaisance sont quotidiennement mis à jour en coordination avec le ministère de l'Environnement tunisien. Nous œuvrons aussi à adopter les nouvelles technologies, telles que les bornes connectées, le self-docking, ainsi que l'exploitation des énergies renouvelables pour une consommation plus responsable. La formation professionnelle dans le domaine du nautisme présente aussi un atout majeur pour minimiser les risques d'incidents par la préservation de la sécurité maritime et de la qualité des interventions accomplies. La diversification des offres touristiques fait partie aussi des lignes directives de notre stratégie, surtout avec le retour progressif de l'activité croisiériste en Tunisie depuis 2015. 38 escales seront programmées à l'Agolet Shipping Cruise en 2022 et un comité de pilotage sous la présidence du ministère du Tourisme assume la tâche de coordination des efforts des différents intervenants afin d'assurer la sécurisation des circuits touristiques ainsi que la veille environnementale. La promotion du produit touristique pour ces croisiéristes passe par la mise en valeur du patrimoine immatériel, par la présentation de la gastronomie spécifique tunisienne de la mer et de la pêche artisanale et l'industrie connexe telle que les charfia, la réalisation des documentaires tels que l'INEA Blue ou Thalassa concernant l'aspect communautaire en mer en Tunisie. D'autres projets sont en cours d'étude en concertation avec le ministère de l'Agriculture et de la Pêche et le ministère du Transport et de la Logistique, tels que la Pesca Tourisme et l'ITI-Tourisme, dans le cadre du projet Ensemble, un concept de la diversification de la pêche, une opportunité qu'on peut considérer comme économique pour les pêcheurs, petit métier, mais également des résultats positifs sont attendus, aussi bien sur l'environnement par la réduction de l'effort de pêche, que pour enrichir la culture et le tourisme local dans les régions. Le circuit des îles n'échappe pas non plus au projet tant convoité par le ministère du Tourisme, en collaboration avec le ministère de l'Environnement, et ce dans le cadre de l'écotourisme et la préservation de la biodiversité marine, animale et végétale dans nos îles. En étroite collaboration avec les associations écologiques et celles de plongée, on œuvre aussi dans le but de minimiser la pollution par le plastique et le microplastique dans les milieux marins, en organisant des campagnes de sensibilisation, de collecte et de nettoyage dans les ports et les fonds marins. Les campagnes de sensibilisation s'étalent sur toute l'année par l'organisation de séminaires, de foires, telles que la fête de la plaisance qui s'est déroulée dernièrement à Gamart du 21 au 24 octobre, de forums tels que le forum de Bizerte qui a été organisé aussi à Bizerte les 24 et 25 septembre. Donc, la diversification de l'offre touristique et l'animation des zones côtières non exploitées, mais qui regorgent de potentiels économiques et culturaux touristiques, tels que les ports puniques, est aussi dans la ligne de mire du ministère du Tourisme, et ce par la mise en valeur événementielle et la promotion de l'aspect touristique des ports archéologiques en coordination avec l'Institut national du patrimoine tunisien, ainsi que par l'organisation d'événements sur le plan d'eau, tels que des défilés, des régates, et des simulations de batailles navales, dans le cadre d'un festival de l'histoire de la mer pour la mise en valeur du patrimoine matériel. Juste pour finir, il fallait aussi mentionner que le défi et en même temps l'opportunité auquel nous sommes confrontés est de pouvoir réconcilier l'aspect commercial des activités liées au secteur de la plaisance dans la région méditerranéenne avec la durabilité environnementale, qui, en plus d'assurer la protection de l'environnement, est un facteur concurrentiel important et un moteur de croissance économique. Ainsi, dans le cadre de restructuration et de réforme du secteur de la plaisance et du tourisme nautique en Tunisie, nous vous proposons la création d'une table conjointe organisationnelle, économique et technique pour évaluer la possibilité d'une activité de promotion, de valorisation et d'accompagnement sur les problématiques liées à la chaîne économie de la mer, à travers le partage de projets et la coopération dans l'événementiel qui peuvent être organisés en Tunisie avec l'implication du monde institutionnel, entrepreneurial et associatif. Et merci beaucoup.
Matteo, you're muted.
Okay, sorry, sorry. So thanks a lot, Mohamed Mehdi. So I was saying that we understand that in Tunisia, you look for this diversification of kind of mass tourism through new products to try to be sustainable and you also put a lot of stake on marinas and yachting. Maybe it's a good introduction to the, I think the last speaker, if Lemhaba or Yarba from Mauritania doesn't show up for connection issues. So Chantel, you run Natural Greece. Natural Greece intermediates with international visitors wanting to experience a sustainable experience locally. Maybe you can also elaborate on how you see the potential and risk for yachting and cruising and marina, if you have ideas on that. But I let you maybe close this very short but interesting wrap up of key ideas around this sustainability topic. So we see how do you do in the Eastern Med, how do you work with local NGOs to provide competitive packages, basically.
So hello, and thank you, Matteo, and thank you to all the speakers for these very interesting presentations. It's great to learn from all of you. So I'm here in the Athens Riviera. Matt is 300 meters behind me, a little bit east. But yes, so my name is Chantel, and I'm the owner of Natural Greece, which is a tour operator with an eco and wildlife focus. And this is founded a tour operator in 2013 with really a mission, and the mission was tourism as a tool for nature conservation. So maybe we can go to the slides. I don't know if you can help with that, or shall I try to share my screen?
Maybe if you share it, it's easier than for you to manage,
it's
but we can.
Easier, okay. No. Let's see, here we go. Yeah. Okay, so Natural Greece. So eco and wildlife holidays all over Greece.
I'm sorry, Chantel, I can't see your presentation. I don't know if the rest of you can, but maybe I can share it for you, if that helps.
Yeah, if you can, yes, because, yeah, Matt, maybe that's best.
Perfect.
You can share it.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Chantel, can you see it?
I think so, yeah. So,
okay.
Wait. Sorry. Okay, now it's visible, yes. So you can go to the next slide. Yes, so when you think of Greece as a destination, we all know it's a major tourism destination. 32 arrivals in 2019. We're not doing bad also this year, just only 4 months, but it was a good year in terms of tourism arrivals. When you think of Greece, you probably think of islands and cultural heritage, but we have a focus on natural heritage, which is rarely the focus. I think you can say that in general for a lot of Mediterranean destinations. This is the focus where we help serve the increasingly sophisticated needs of customers. So definitely we see a rise in demand here. For instance, you know, we're talking about coastal tourism, so coastal tourism, maritime packages like sea turtle volunteering holidays, dolphin conservation holidays, Mediterranean monk seal expeditions, and also terrestrial like brown bear themed or bird watching. So if we look at innovation, sustainable tourism innovation, definitely I think cross-sector partnerships wasn't happening so much in Greece. So the collaboration between a nature organization and a tour operator, I think it was pretty rare, and it has fantastic results. So if you collaborate, you will ensure responsible wildlife viewing, excellent experiences for the travelers. A lot of travelers are demanding.
I'm looking for it. Okay.
Oh yeah. nature, so-called nature positive travel. And this is how we call it nowadays. People, people want to have an impact. So this is
Remember
definitely
everyone to mute because we can hear background noise that doesn't help translation and no speakers. Thanks. Sorry, Chantal.
sure. So the cross-sector partnerships and the collaboration with NGOs, with nature organizations, it also benefits nature conservation, usually because there's often a donation from travelers or they volunteer. So we're talking about equal volunteering. And like I said, this is definitely growing, the need for this kind of packages. Then the other innovation is the continuously developing new tourism experiences for tour operator clients, mainly from the UK, the Netherlands, Germany, Western Northern Europe, with a focus on off the beaten track, supporting local communities. It's about immersive travel, creating a positive impact. Another aspects of sustainable tourism innovation, well, like Maura very rightfully mentioned, you have to measure and you have to make a plan and you have to measure and then you have to implement the plan. So this is what we have been doing, responsible travel members since 2013. And we have been doing, but you always need to improve, like the new step is carbon footprint measurement. What Maura also mentioned, if you have a tour package, you should measure the carbon footprint. So this was done with our partner, Much Better Adventures. And we're also doing this with another movement called Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency, which is a movement where you can join as a tourism organization, and already 400 have joined, 400 so far, and growing. And they will also help you with an action plan and with a climate action plan and the implementation. Because the reality is, when you're a SME, for the SMEs is, you need capacity to do all this. You need capacity to do all this, and this kind of initiatives can help you with that for all types of businesses in tourism. So I mentioned a few challenges. There are also opportunities for tourism or ecotourism in Greece. Lack of coordination and joint action is also what Maura mentioned, we can have a strategy, for instance, for nature-based tourism on a national or regional level. And so also the rich natural heritage, I think this is an opportunity for everybody that it's not always so well known or so well promoted. So this is a tremendous wealth of experiences that you can create. Legal practices, we try to establish responsible wildlife viewing. And in reality, especially in mass tourism destinations, you see it's not always the reality. So this is a challenge, I think, to respect wildlife. And that's also a matter of educating, raising awareness on these issues. So yeah, these are a few topics from the viewpoint of tour operator.
Thank you, Chantal, very much. Also for keeping it brief, we kind of exceeding the timing. I mean, I don't know, we really need to close up, but I mean, I thank you all, and I resume a few keywords. If you want to add any other keywords, please do. But I see you kind of saying start from your own goods, like look at your asset first and consider what you really want to exploit in a sustainable manner. I see a lot of like participatory strategizing, so we need to have a plan, but bring on board different stakeholders and do that. There's a discussion, of course, diversification and digitalization might help with that, but there can be different ways to provide to run away from.
Excuse me, no voice. We can hear nothing. I'm sorry.
Okay, is it just you or am I just talking?
I can hear you, Matteo.
I can hear also, Matteo.
So I will go ahead. I'm sorry, we have a problem with translation, I guess. But if it is, I don't know who spoke because it was a bit. I try again. So we say you start from your asset, you bring in participation and strategy, diversification. We hear like also the yachting and boating. I think a lot of is measuring and monitoring as a starting point, but then training and capacity building. And I think all of that also, I think you also touch upon both elements. They're not the same, obviously, but there's a lot to learn from upscaling all the experience that you mentioned on green destination. And there's also some discussion on incubation and acceleration of business, which was a key point, I think, how to really make it a business case for sustainable business development and investment in that. So I don't know if you have anything particular to add to this. I hope that you can hear my voice, and I thank you very much for this. So I don't know, Daniela, Chantel, Mauro, Joseph, Mohammed, if you have anything to add very, very briefly in a couple of words, or we just move to the next session because we're kind of late. Okay, so I think we cope with that. But thanks a lot. It was very, very enriching and a good basis for discussion. Then I think we move, is a good way to build upon for Michele, that acts here as a consultant from the Union for the Mediterranean and the work that they do with CPMR in this handbook. You can discuss and maybe build upon what we've been saying. Thanks a lot, everyone, and thanks a lot to the translator as well, because we've been very fast, because we started a bit late. And I understand it's not easy to translate when you go fast in talking. Please, Michele, try to be brief yourself if you can, and thanks a lot.
Yes, of course, Matteo. I will do my best to be brief, but let's say just to let's say launch a message about the activity that CPMR and UFM, Union for the Mediterranean, promoted this last month. I don't know if you see my screen. I'm just sharing some content in order to. Thank you very much. In order to, let's say, to introduce, let's say, the main result of the activity that indeed the UFM and CPMR launched before the pandemic. But then, let's say, we had to face the pandemic, so we adapt in a way this activity to the real and concrete situation that we were facing during the pandemic. The activity was, let's say, focused and aimed to the preparation of an handbook, because we see and we heard today through the contribution of the other participants to this webinar, that of course tourism is one of the most important economic sector in the Mediterranean region. Well, in many countries all over the world indeed, but in the Mediterranean region is of course the primary economic sector. So we started from this concept, and then we try to put together all the main representatives of the stakeholders and players that should have a role in the recovery of the sector, just to identify together with them who are the main concrete tools to relaunch tourism sector. Indeed, to, let's say, as an experimental phase, let's say, of these of the need to put together different level of institutions and those who are the operator on the field, we establish a very small group of experts where international organizations, member states, and also representative of cooperation projects were represented. And during the two meetings with this group of experts, we shared the awareness, two main things. The awareness that, well, of course, pandemic is not an opportunity, because it should be not so correct to see it as an opportunity, but we have the responsibility altogether to see, to take, let's say, the best from these event. And because through this event, we all understood that we need to rethink, as we said today, the policies and the initiatives and the measures for tourism sector. And the second thing is that we understood and we confirmed in a way that cooperation is the key. So the fact that we need to put together all the best practices and all the best initiatives to relaunch altogether tourism in the Mediterranean region. To do so, we start from a consideration that is the need to have as our strategic framework this document that I put here, that I mentioned here, which are, for example, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and that's why we involve also the World Tourism Organization to allow us to understand what are the initiatives to join these goals. But of course, also the UFM ministerial declaration, both on sustainable blue economy, last February, the second, and the last one on the environment and climate change last October. And of course, the one that Manuel also mentioned, that is the communication of the European Commission on a new approach to a sustainable blue economy. And what we try to do, and we described in this handbook, is the need to give operational tools in order to be compliant with these strategies. And that's why we identify some purpose of the tool developed in the handbook. So the need to implement strategies and policies decided at both international, but also at, let's say, national and subnational level, because we need to decrease the gap between the policymakers and the operators on the field in order to identify those strategies that represent a real response to the needs of the territories. And at the same time, in order to be real, concrete and effective in the implementation phase of these policies, we need to improve the skills of the operator. And that's why we prepare this handbook, is now finalized indeed, where starting from the best, let's say, practices and let's say the main studies and analyses that focus on the pandemic, starting from, for example, the analysis promoted by the OECD, for example, we prepare some suggestions, some recommendation in order to let's say, better know the situation on field concerning tourism, and how to better involve the players to put in place those measures that are decided at policy level. And to do so, we started from some case studies. I mentioned here 3 of them in order to understand and to let you understand what was our, let's say, path to identify concrete tools for the tourism recovery. So, for example, we use the methodology that in the framework of Interreg Med program allowed the implementation of Panoramed project, which is the governance platform, who has as a main concrete result the promotion of 2 strategic projects on tourism, sustainable tourism, addressing these main challenges as I reported in this slide. And in order to understand how it is possible to have joint projects involving the 2 shores of the Mediterranean, we also refer to co-evolve for blue growth, that we will, I know that during the webinar, some more information on this project will be shared. And what is important is that Co-evolve for Blue Growth is one of UFM labeled project that means and stressed the importance of this project for the two shores of the Mediterranean countries. And as to PanorAMED, and referring also to the governance axis of the new programs for the 21-27 programming period, is going through country assessments for UFM labeling, and this could be defined for December. And in order to understand the importance also of the capitalization of the previous experience and successful experience in terms of cooperation projects, we also mentioned the MEET platform. So the network, as you well know, of network parks, developing high quality ecotourism experience, who involves countries in the two shore of the Mediterranean. Let's think of Italy, Greece, Lebanon, etc. And this is a concrete example, in my opinion, on how the decision-making process could really enhance the potentiality of territories and could really promote concrete experience and tools to be developed at territorial level. What are next steps concerning this handbook? This could be, let's say, our main purpose, because we would like to start with a process. So not just to prepare a deliverable, to prepare a document, but in order to test what we mentioned in the handbook, we would like to promote some capacity building sessions in the coming month, to test and to exercise what we mentioned in the handbook. And the first one will be held in December, the 15th of December, back to back to the Inter-Mediterranean Commission Task Force on Sustainable Tourism. Part of this day will be devoted to this exercise, will be probably in an hybrid form, with online and in presence. We are trying to organize the best way this event, which will be the first of a series of capacity building sessions to, let's say, promote this exchange among institutions and operators on field, to test which is the best solution in order to recover tourism in the Mediterranean region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michele, also to keep it brief. Much appreciated. So I leave the floor, I think, to Anya Detan from SINEA for another brief, I hope. Sorry, Anya, for that overview of the very important call that we're here for. So you need to be brief but not brief after you want to handle that. But thank you very much, Anya. And indeed, we're very happy that we finally have a fully WestMed call. So please give us all the full details. Thank you very much. I guess Irene will share the slide.
Okay, thank you, Mattea. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think what I will have to say about the call already nicely fits with a number of examples, at least the bits I've heard about it, and also the handbook looks like a very good way to start and attempt your chances for the call. So yes, if we can start maybe the presentation. So my name is Anya de Tant. I will say a couple of words of SINEA. So SINEA, next slide, please. SINEA is the European Climate Infrastructure and Environmental Executive Agency, dealing with a number of different programs. And one of them, as you can see, is the European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund. And that is the one where not only I'm working, but also where we have now launched a specific call to support coastal and maritime tourism in the Western Mediterranean. Next slide, please. So just a couple of words on the European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund, MFAF, which is the successor of the EMFF fund, which you all well know. So MFAF is partly managed by CINEA for the direct management part, so the money that is spent directly by the Commission, at least part of that part. And what we are doing is supporting projects that have to do with the Union's maritime policy and with sustainable blue economy, but also the part where we support the common fisheries policy. As you can see, there's the total budget of 6 billion. We manage a small part of it, so a part of the direct management, which is about 800 million. So that is the fund under which the WestMED call for sustainable tourism has been launched. Next slide, please. Voilà, thank you. And what we want to do with this call is to strengthen the competitiveness and the sustainability of coastal and maritime tourism in the Western Mediterranean, with a focus on, or a big concern about preserving the environment, but also preserving our maritime cultural heritage and contributing, I would say, to the attractiveness of the Mediterranean coastal areas as a tourist destination. So the idea of the call is to tap into the growing ecotourism market, but also to boost innovation and digitalization in the sector, a sector which has, of course, suffered severely from the sanitary situation, and also to improve the business environment for small and medium-sized enterprises in the tourism sectors in the Western Mediterranean. So we are looking for projects that bring a coordinated approach at sea basin level and that will be active at the two shores of the Mediterranean. So we have two big lines or two big objectives in this call. One is the project needs to either propose something in the field of innovation in destination management or design of smart ecotourism packages. And from the Greek example, we have already got a feeling of what this means. So when we look at the first one, innovation in destination management, and in the context, there are a number of details explained. So one of them is that projects should address environmental and social sustainability. They could promote synergies between the tourism sector, but also other actors, local governments, communities, trade associations, as an example. Projects could be proposing effective new innovative marketing strategies, which really highlight a cultural authenticity of the region, which highlight the natural assets of the region. So that as an example. And when we look into the second objective, so design of ecotourism packages, the idea is that the project fits into the circular approach of the Commission, that there's an attention for reducing the ecological footprint of the sector, but also strengthening destination via collaboration of local clusters or promote less known areas, off-season destinations, etc. What is important to mention is that we will look into projects that have an impact and a sustainability in itself beyond the duration of the project, and that also are able to demonstrate that they, first of all, fit into existing policy frameworks, which is both on relevant at regional, national level, but also, of course, the Western Mediterranean Initiative, which has set a number of priorities, and that the project is building on what is already there and is capitalizing on some other projects or other initiatives that have been successful, so that we don't start from scratch again. Next slide, please. Okay. Then in the context, there's a number of conditions for submission. Maybe important to mention is that there should be minimum 4 entities from 4 different eligible countries involved, which means minimum 2 EU member states, and at least one eligible non-EU country, so one country of the Southern Shore, and amongst the eligible non-EU countries are all the countries that are part of the WestMED initiative. We also want to stimulate or encourage cooperation with the private sector, so also one private sector business entity or association should be part of the consortium proposing the project, and one local, regional, or city level public authority from a European country. Then we have a budget of around 1 million. We are thinking of funding with these 1 or 2 projects, depending on, of course, the quality of the projects. And the projects should be running between 24 and 36 months. Now the call is open since 28th of September, but you still have until the 12th of January included to submit your proposal. And next slide, please. Voila. And then for more information, I would want to invite you to have a look at CINEA funding portal, where you find the call text and all the details that you need to know to be able to submit your application. And with this, I want to wish you success, good luck, and we look forward seeing some good project proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anya, and everyone. So I give back the floor to Stephanie. I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to have a brief pause
Yes.
now and then maybe skip the other one.
What maybe I suggest, Matteo, is that we continue with the momentum, particularly following the presentation which has been delivered by Anya, because I think it fits very well in terms of the first topic that we will be discussing. And we can maybe postpone the coffee break for after that, the session on the role of innovation and diversifying the tourism products.
Please go ahead, you lead.
Yeah. So with that, as I said before, we think that this webinar definitely serves as a good footing in terms of the tying in with this EMFAF call. And in fact, the session which we have now, which is on the important role of innovation when it comes to diversifying the tourism products, definitely fits in with the 2 objectives which were mentioned in the previous presentation. So we have a presentation on the Encircle project, which is all about fostering circularity in tourism and considering the wider elements of circularity, following which we will focus more on synergies and complementarities and the role of governance through the iHeritage project, and then the TourismEd Plus in terms of the diversification of Mediterranean tourism. So I'm going to leave the floor to Mr. Manuel Sapliano, Mr. Lucenzo Tambuzzo, and Ms. Petra Korska, to please deliver a very short presentation if you can really limit the time. I also invite the participants to please pose any questions which you may have in the chat function. Thank you. Manuel, please.
So thanks, Stephanie. Hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so sharing my screen. Just confirm if it's full screen or not. Oh.
Yes, we can see it on full screen.
Okay, good. So a quick presentation to introduce the Encircle project within this workshop. So basically, Encircle is a project which deals with the circularity in tourism, but circularity in the destination more than the tourism activity. So tries to get a more comprehensive approach. It's a project funded under WestMED, involving 6 countries, and started in November 19 and will end June next year. If going to switch the slide. 17. So partners from 6 countries: Italy, Spain, Malta, Cyprus, Greece, and Albania. And this gives also quite a good cross-section of the tourism in the Mediterranean, and also the tourism activities and destinations and their different characteristics. The main role of the project is to try to apply the principles of circular economy with a focus on regional tourism in island and low-density areas. Apart from that, the model which is being developed is also being transferred, as we'll see, to in other areas in the Mediterranean. And at the end, let's say, with the experience gathered with the main partners and also the replicating partners, adopt circularity indicators which can test the sustainability, the circularity in different tourism areas, and therefore help tourism policies in these areas to be updated and optimized, so that as more as possible we move towards a sustainable tourism sector. Therefore, let's say, what are the main, through the objectives, what are the main aspects of Encircle? So basically, we're focusing on an area and not on an entity, so therefore we're focusing on policies developed by administrations, and therefore then these policies would help the optimization of the entities. So we're trying to broaden the approach. And also we're seeing from these tourism areas, so how to infiltrate, how to cohese the tourism area within the region or within the country or the island itself. And therefore, sustainability is being viewed not just from the point of view of specific sustainable issues like energy, water, mobility, and waste, which are the key factors in the project itself, but we're also looking at it from the point of view of how the establish a cohesive aspect between the tourism area and the surrounding areas, such that there's also sustainability in the measures and from the services which offers. So the operational model of the project is built around 5 principles. So start basically rethink, regenerate, reduce, revalue, and innovate. And these 5 aspects are applied, are adopted to water management, to electricity supply, so energy, to waste, and also to mobility. And within this aspect of assessing the territory, doing a context analysis, setting up targets, and also planning and trying to secure the funding to make this move towards increased circularity, comes also with assessing policies for the sectors, policies for the areas, and therefore also supporting a more cohesive governance of the sector itself, because we're looking at tourism policies, but tourism policies have a good overlap between different sectoral policies of all the 4 sectors which the project addresses. Now we're in the last stage of the project, so we're in the capitalization aspect, and the model which has been developed is being transferred to other regions, so in islands in Greece, Croatia, and other areas in Spain and Italy, so such that now the tested model which we have developed is also tested in other substantially different areas, and therefore one can move towards the publication of this policy testing tool, which eventually can be used by all tourism areas in the Mediterranean, because it will reflect the variabilities of the Mediterranean to optimize policies and to ensure that tourism policies are very, very much ingrained within other sectoral policies in the country. And we believe that this tool can be important if adopted by other regions to self-assess policies, so policymakers can self-assess policies and initiate this process of optimizing what one does. That's all from me with a brief introduction, and Stephanie, floor back to you.
Thank you, Manuel. Thank you very much for keeping the presentation within time. We would like to focus now more on the cross-sectoral element of the sector. Obviously, the tourism sector touches and it depends on, so it not only influences, but it also depends on other sectors within the blue economy. And there's obviously a very important role in terms of these synergies, particularly in terms of the diversifying the tourism products. So the floor is yours, Mr. Vincenzo Tambuzzo.
Hi, good afternoon to everyone, and thanks very much for the invitation. It's a very interesting conversation, discussion today. And I think that my contribution may be focusing on how innovative technologies may affect our travel experiences for the next coming years. That's specifically true, actually, according to the most recent declarations by Mr. Zuckerberg and by also Microsoft. They are actually informing us of the upcoming metaverse, which will be present in our lives starting from the first half of 2022. Basically, we are talking about a virtual world where we can actually enter through our avatars and move around and visit places and enjoy other social contacts with other people and other avatars. It seems very futuristic, but it's actually coming in the next future months. And is in this direction we are moving with the project iHeritage, which is a project funded by the ENI WestMED program with a total budget of 3.8 million euros. And the project will last 30 months. It started on the 15th September 2020. And it has a composition of 10 partners from 6 countries. And the project is led by the region of Sicily, the Department of Tourism, and involves the network of castles and medieval towns, which I represent, and the Confederation of Egyptian European Business Associations based in Alexandria, Egypt, Ascama in Spain, the Jordan Society for Research in Jordan, the Department of Antiquities in Jordan, and also Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture of Beirut, which is going to be confirmed in the next couple of months, and the University of Algarve and the Andalusian Public Foundation, El Legado Andalusi in Spain, and the University of Palermo. What we are trying to do with iHeritage is actually to support technological transfer and commercialization of innovative ICT products, which will be bringing augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality in our travels and experiences of UNESCO cultural sites, which include the pyramids, fields of Giza, Petra, Byblos, cultural sites in Spain, Alhambra, and selected UNESCO cultural sites in Sicily as well. And also, we will embrace the intangible cultural heritage universe by creating specific products. And also, we are actually creating the living labs. They are in total 10 living labs, which will be focusing on research and development. We are also running training courses and research agreements, which are at the basis of the creation of the innovative products. And also the projects will spread out the AR, VR, and the MR innovative products for, well, suggesting new methodologies of enjoying and accessing our very rich heritage in Mediterranean countries. And the projects will be also funding 35 spin-offs, NewCo, which will be focusing on the creation of new products, new AR, VR, and mixed reality products for enjoying our cultural heritage. Well, some of the projects which will be created by iHeritage include the online register of intangible cultural heritage of Mediterranean countries, guided tools in augmented reality, where you can actually use your smartphone or tablet, point your smartphone to a specific site and enjoy a 3D reconstruction with a narration on the specific elements and curiosities as well. And also 3D recontext, so where you can actually point you phone to a specific archaeological find and see the archaeological find in its original context. This will give you certainly some new key of interpretation, which may be enjoyed through cross media, mobile phones or tablets. But also archaeocinema, where you can enjoy and see through your mobile device augmented reality scenes of famous movies shot in Petra, or, well, space-time elevators, an immersive installation where you can set the age and the time and enjoy the pyramids of fields of Giza in a specific time, which may be 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, or right now. And many other products, which includes also holographic exhibitions, virtual museums on UNESCO sites, and also virtual archaeological reconstructions. Well, all these products will be basically commercialized by 35 startups, which will be funded by the project. And also iHeritage will be also organizing international events for the presentation of these innovative products to business angels, also capital ventures funds. We will finally create the network of UNESCO cultural sites in the Mediterranean and the Regional Center for Safeguarding and Valorization of Intangible Cultural Heritage of the Mediterranean areas. So basically, in my point of view, the time for visual tourism is actually ripe. And well, this kind of visual tourism is just starting from next year. There are also a couple of few numbers of companies who are actually producing visual products for the proposing this kind of innovative experiences. And there is also a kind of environmental sustainable experience, which will certainly reduce the travels, which accounts for 8% of the global carbon emissions. So I think that, well, certainly in the next few months and years, we should get used to travel in our sofa with our Oculus, or to enjoy augmented products through our smartphones on the sites where we are actually visiting. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Vincenzo. Definitely an interesting presentation and a showcasing of a very innovative project, which involves a number of stakeholders, very importantly from the northern as well as from the southern shores of the Mediterranean as well. I will now leave the floor to the TourismEd Plus project. Must apologize. I'll now introduce Mr. Tommaso Scavone for the presentation.
Oui, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Je vais parler en français. Tout d'abord, je voudrais vous remercier pour la possibilité que vous allez nous donner aujourd'hui. Moi, je suis Tommaso Scavone, je travaille pour la coopérative Petra Patrimonio Corsica. Nous, on est basé en Corse, dans l'île de la Corse, au milieu de la Méditerranée. Mon intervention aujourd'hui, il tournera autour de notre petite expérience pour essayer d'innover un des secteurs, on pourrait dire, le plus réticent à l'innovation, c'est-à-dire le secteur de la pêche artisanale ou traditionnelle. Il y a pas mal d'années que nous travaillons sur ce domaine et on travaille avec les acteurs locaux pour pouvoir ouvrir, on pourrait dire, un petit interstice entre la pêche et le tourisme. Et notre but final, c'est d'essayer d'intégrer la pêche traditionnelle ou artisanale avec le tourisme, bien sûr, pour redynamiser les économies des zones côtières, grâce à l'engagement des communautés côtières et des parties prenantes des communautés côtières. Oui, vous avez bien compris. Nous, on travaille dans un domaine très concret, si vous voulez. On travaille dans le sauvedomaine de la pescatourisme. Pourquoi moi je l'appelle sauvegarde domaine? Parce que comme vous pouvez imaginer, comme vous savez, la pescatourisme, il intègre le secteur de la pêche et le secteur du tourisme. Les deux, aujourd'hui, vous l'avez déjà bien dit, alors je ne vole pas du temps aux personnes, vous l'avez bien dit, ils sont en train d'avoir beaucoup de changements. Alors nous, on devait innover, on devait, si vous voulez, entre guillemets, révolutionner les deux secteurs. Mais c'est quoi la pescatourisme? En termes concrets, la pescatourisme, c'est donner la possibilité, permettre aux pêcheurs de pouvoir embarquer des touristes sur les bateaux de pêche artisanale, bien sûr, pour permettre aux touristes internationaux et aux touristes locaux de bien profiter d'un jour avec des pêcheurs, pour découvrir le savoir-faire du métier de la pêche artisanale, pour pouvoir connaître la culture du territoire que les touristes sont en train, bien sûr, de visiter, et pour pouvoir profiter des produits de la mer. Et pourquoi pas pouvoir apprendre aussi de manière informelle les défis et les enjeux du monde actuel. Il y a trois composantes très intéressantes dans le domaine de la pescatourisme. La première composante, je l'ai déjà évoquée, c'est la composante pêche artisanale, que les économistes ils appellent activité primaire, qu'aujourd'hui ils souffrent dans la Méditerranée, mais dans tout le monde, on pourrait dire, de beaucoup de problèmes. La situation méditerranéenne, c'est un peu particulière parce qu'au nord de la Méditerranée, nous voyons que l'âge moyen s'est beaucoup élevé. C'est-à-dire, par exemple, en Corse, l'âge moyen des pêcheurs, c'est 58 ans. Dans le sud de la Méditerranée, on voit la situation inverse. On pouvait dire que l'âge moyen, c'est vraiment, vraiment pas élevé et c'est moins élevé que l'âge moyen dans le nord de la Méditerranée. Une troisième caractéristique, si vous voulez, que lie le nord et le sud de la Méditerranée, c'est la nécessité de protéger la ressource halieutique, mais aussi de lutter contre la pêche illégale, mais aussi de lutter contre la pollution marine. C'est-à-dire qu'aujourd'hui, la Méditerranée, il a deux problématiques différentes, mais il y a aussi des problématiques communes. Ça, c'est pour le volet pêche. Le volet tourisme, et le volet, on pouvait dire, de démarche territoriale qui est couvert par la pescatourisme, c'est un volet très, très, très intéressant. Pourquoi je dis que c'est en démarche territoriale, mettre en place des activités de pescatourisme? Parce qu'aujourd'hui, il est incontournable de créer les conditions durables pour faire travailler ensemble des acteurs de deux secteurs complètement différents. Les acteurs territoriaux qui travaillent dans le domaine de la pêche et les acteurs territoriaux qui travaillent dans le domaine du tourisme. Et la troisième composante, si vous voulez, aussi très intéressant, que c'est strictement lié, bien sûr, à la deuxième composante, c'est on a découvert une incapacité de travailler de manière isolée. On pouvait dire que les deux domaines, dans le sauvedomaine de la pescatourisme, ils doivent travailler vraiment ensemble. Il est incontournable de travailler de manière intégrée, d'utiliser une approche que c'est une approche intégrée, intersectorielle entre les deux filières, encore une fois, la filière pêche et la filière touristique. Mais pour faire quoi ça? Pour développer, pour co-créer, pour donner la possibilité à des touristes particuliers, on pouvait dire, de faire des expériences touristiques complètement nouvelles pour les touristes internationaux, mais aussi pour les touristes domestiques. Là, vous voyez notre petite expérience dans le domaine de la pescatourisme. Nous, on a démarré à travailler sur le domaine dans le 2017 grâce au projet WestMED, où nous avons co-développé grâce aux pêcheurs, et on l'a aussi expérimenté sur le terrain, un modèle de business très innovant et un modèle de business basé sur la pescatourisme. C'était la première fois dans la Méditerranée que quelqu'un il a travaillé sur les business modeling. Et bien sûr, ce modèle de business, ce modèle économique, il était basé sur les principes de la diversification économique. Après, grâce à WestMED, on a pu découvrir, et aussi, comme vous pouvez imaginer, pour assurer la durabilité dans le futur du métier de la pêche artisanale, on était sollicité par les pêcheurs sur des enjeux de formation. Mettre en place des activités de formation, il est incontournable. Et alors, on a essayé, grâce à un projet qui s'appelle Fit for Blue et grâce au programme Erasmus+, on a essayé de mettre en place des outils de formation traditionnels, mais aussi innovantes pour cette démarche-là. Troisième étape qu'on a suivie, c'était bien sûr basé sur les résultats de WestMED, mais aussi sur les retours eus dans le cadre du projet Fit for Blue. On s'est rendu compte que pour mettre en place la pescatourisme, il est incontournable, comme je viens de dire, d'utiliser une approche intégrée. Une approche intégrée et aussi une approche entre les filières, intersectorielle. Et là, grâce à la Community-Led Local Development Strategy et aux outils et aux méthodologies du DLAL, comme ils disent les Françaises, on a pu travailler dans le cadre du projet ensemble que le monsieur Benadia de la Tunisie, il a nommé tout à l'heure. On a pu travailler avec des parties prenantes et des pêcheurs de pas mal de pays de la Méditerranée. Et pour la première fois, on a intégré aussi et on a travaillé avec des acteurs du sud de la Méditerranée, notamment avec le WWF Tunisie. Quatrième expérience que moi aujourd'hui je voudrais partager avec vous, c'est l'expérience qu'on est en train de faire dans le cadre du projet FishMedNet, que c'est financé dans le cadre du programme IFVP. Là, nous, on est en train d'établir des collaborations commerciales à la fois au niveau local et à la fois au niveau méditerranéen entre les acteurs publics, notamment les collectivités locales, et tous les acteurs privés de la filière pêche et de la filière tourisme. Les résultats de FishMedNet, encore, on l'a parce qu'on est en train de travailler, mais par contre, on vient de démarrer, et ça c'est le but, on pouvait dire, de mon présentation, on vient de démarrer notre dernière expérience à aujourd'hui sur la filière de la pescatourisme, qui sera présentée par le projet WestMED+, où nous, on est en train de travailler pour capitaliser, bien sûr, toute la connaissance qu'on a obtenue grâce à ce bouquet de projets que vous voyez dans cette slide. Et on est en train aussi de capitaliser vers l'externe les outils et les méthodes qu'on a développés jusqu'à aujourd'hui. Et on est en train, grâce au projet Tourisme Plus, de travailler en Bosnie et en Monténégro pour essayer d'intégrer la démarche de la pescatourisme dans une démarche plus large de tourisme durable. Dernier mot que j'aimerais bien partager avec vous, c'est que quand on parle de pescatourisme, on parle de pescatourisme à 360 degrés. C'est-à-dire, c'est une petite partie d'un puzzle un peu plus large, que bien sûr, il touche l'engagement des parties prenantes, il touche l'engagement des citoyens des zones côtières, il touche l'innovation, il touche le slow tourisme, c'est-à-dire que c'est une vision vraiment globale que nous, on est en train de mettre en place grâce au soutien de plusieurs programmes de l'Union européenne et grâce à notre réseau de partenaires sur la Méditerranée. Ça, c'est l'expérience jusqu'à aujourd'hui. Bien sûr, pour le prochain futur, nous voulons capitaliser les méthodes et les pays et les outils dans des pays de la WestMed. Bien sûr, pour augmenter la compétitivité des communautés côtières. Bien sûr, pour aider les porteurs de projets à développer leurs activités et à créer des emplois dans l'écotourisme, aussi à travers la codéfinition et l'expérimentation d'expériences touristiques éco-sostenibles. Vraiment, dernièrement,
Thank you very much, Tommaso.
Last few words.
Je dis seulement,
All I wanted to
dernièrement,
say basically.
Sorry, pardon, que je peux
The
dire
interpreters are getting
dernièrement.
feedback. Could
I think you should
people turn off their loudspeakers? Thank you.
Steph, if you could mute yourself because I think we're hearing your translation.
Yeah, exactly. It comes from your translation.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Tommaso. I'm afraid that we're very tight with time. So I will just provide an observation, I think, mainly from this session. I think it's quite refreshing to see that when it comes to policy making, which has been evident from the Encircle project in terms of the development of circular strategies, as well as in terms of the involvement of stakeholders, traditional stakeholders, be it fishermen, for example, or stakeholders within the cultural heritage sector. I think it's quite refreshing to see that we're going beyond the traditional models and that there's an embracement mainly of innovation as a means of diversifying the tourism product. And this is definitely something which should be encouraged and which should be pushed forward also within the foreseeable future. With that, I suggest that we could maybe have a very, very short break, limiting it just to 5 minutes, maybe enough for everyone to get up and have a quick coffee. And then we will resume with the second session, which is all about accelerating now innovation and the skills uptake. So I suggest that we reconvene in 5 minutes time. So we'll make that at 5:10 to continue with the webinar. Thank you. 3:10, not 5:10. We'll be ready by then. So it's 3:10.
Okay, Vishwa. هادي مثلا.
Welcome back. Good afternoon to you all. I'm Annabelle Bella, and I'll be moderating this session, which will be dealing with the aspect of innovation and diversification of skills within the tourism sector. Within this context, I would like to link as well with the latest. I ask you please to mute yourself. I would like to link with to the latest Commission communication, which was also referred to by Mr. Alonso, on the new approach for sustainable blue economy in the EU, which talks about the importance of innovation for coastal communities, which enables them to rebuild their economies and to become local drivers for sustainability. And in this sense, the Commission recognizes the importance of community-led development to drive this process, and the EU is, as is the EMFAF, have an important role to play in this sense. We have with us speakers from 3 different EU-funded projects. We have Turban, we have Co-Evolve for Blue Growth, and Profit. I kindly ask the speakers to limit your presentation to 5 minutes so that we can possibly take some questions if there will be. So I will introduce the first speaker, Mr. Jordi Escriba, to present us with the project Turban.
Hi, good morning. It's Jordi from Barcelona. Thank you to the WestMED project for inviting us to introduce you our initiative. I am sharing the screen, but I'm not sure you can see it. Can you confirm if you can see it?
Now we can see it.
Yes?
Yes.
Good. So I will quickly introduce you the Turban project. Turban is actually a project that we submitted under the COSME Call for Proposals of 2019, the TourCop, which mainly was devoted to look for projects on the tourism sector and to become the tourism industry to become more sustainable. It's a 30 months project with 1.3 million euros, but the most important thing here, related to what we're gonna speak later, it's that almost like 600,000 euros, so almost 60% of the project budget has to be allocated to financial support to SMEs through an acceleration program that I will explain in a few seconds. The partnership is diverse. We combine public authorities, business support organizations, and academic partners in order to achieve the project results. I would say that the three main components of the projects relate to, first of all, building network and connecting different stakeholders. Second, generate knowledge through research and delivering trainings and workshops, so like a knowledge pillar. And finally, and most important for today, an acceleration program, so to deliver like technical and financial assistance to SMEs in order to help them to implement or to achieve their individual sustainability goals. Okay, so about the acceleration program itself, right now Turban is offering actually a 12-month acceleration program in which we invite SMEs from the different project countries to submit their proposals that have to somehow prove that they mean an improvement on their sustainability of their businesses. Okay, so the cities from which SMEs are eligible are the ones you can see here in the slide. And from the different cities across Europe, you can see that especially some of them, like Barcelona, Dubrovnik, etc., are really facing like big over tourism challenges. Some of the other cities might not appear as having problems like Barcelona or Dubrovnik, but still they face as well some challenges regarding sustainability of tourism, and that's why the partnership will look for proposals from SMEs from these different European cities. As I said, it's a 12-month accelerating program, and basically what we provide to SMEs, it's like a kind of, if you want, vouchers of maximum 10,000 euros with a 100% funding rate in order to support different actions, different activities for SMEs. Basically, we provide them with mentoring support, with exchanges by industry experts and peers, and we invite them to participate in our most relevant events like the Design Thinking Lab, Investor Pitch, and networking events. Important to say that the acceleration program has been designed following the request and the shape of the call for proposals published by EASME. So there are some features that we need to fit in, for instance, the amount of 10,000 euros. Now that we are in the process of the call, we have learned that maybe bigger budgets would have been more attractive for companies. And I say this because even if the rate of application from companies is high, we are struggling actually to get the final objective of supporting 60 companies. Okay, but of course we need to be in line with the provisions of the EASME call, and that's why we are following all these provisions. Anyway, the call is open right now, and we will proceed with the selection of best proposals in the coming weeks. And the starting dates for SMEs in order to implement their individual projects is estimated by February 2022, so in a few months. Okay. Actually, the deadline ends in the 10th of November. So if any one of you is based on one of the project countries and you have an idea to become more sustainable from a tourist SME, we invite you to submit your proposals, because there's still 1 week left in order to do it. Okay. As I said, we intend to support 60 SMEs with this budget. And again, coming from the EASME call, the target groups that we are focusing on in this acceleration program are mainly SMEs that are related to hotels, or holidays, and like accommodation, camping grounds, or similar accommodation companies, and travel agencies and tour operators. Okay, and from the countries that I already mentioned. The maximum duration of the implementation of our support will be 12 months, and companies must link their own individual projects to at least one of these 4 topics. One is smart resource use, so energy and water. Second, related to circular economy and waste management. Third, sustainable destination strategy. And 4, everything related to sustainability certificates and labeling. Okay, so at least the proposal must refer to one of these topics, but they can choose more if they want. Besides, there are some horizontal topics in which they can work, like optional, related more to how to communicate and market the sustainability, technology and digitalization, how to better engage visitors and improve satisfaction, how to manage SMEs human resources in order that they become more aware on sustainability, more accessible and inclusive accommodations, or also topics related on how to access finance and extra finance and incentives in order to become more sustainable. Okay. Regarding the activities, we mainly provide mentoring. We have identified 48 mentors, and it's important to say that it's the SMEs who will actually select the mentors. What we are doing is to identify mentors, publish like a fact sheet for each mentor with their skills, their profile, their picture. But in the end, it's up to the SMEs with the vouchers of 10,000 euros to select the most relevant mentor. Okay, so it's like a marketplace between SMEs and mentors. Other types of activities that we are inviting companies is to attend our workshops and, as I said, to participate in some of our Turban events that are closely related to the objectives of the acceleration program. Okay, regarding eligible cost, well, we are covering travel and subsistence for SMEs that are attending these events, and of course, external services like mentoring or other type of consultancy or advisory services. Okay, another lesson learned, also coming from the structure of the call for proposals from EASME, we cannot fund human resources, the staff costs for SMEs. This is one thing that we know that SMEs will really appreciate, but based on the provisions of the call, staff costs in order to implement the projects are not eligible for the SMEs. Okay. What else? I think that's pretty much all. As I said, it's maximum 10,000 euros. They can propose bigger budget, but our support will be cut at 10,000 euros. And that's it. Unfortunately, we still don't have conclusions about the project submitted by SMEs because the call is open. We will have this information in few weeks. So we will more than happy to share the results with the WestMED community if you are interested. So thank you very much. And I remain at your disposal for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Escobar. It was very interesting. I now introduce Mr. Giuliano Tallone and welcome him to take the floor to present the project Co-Evolve for BG.
Thank you. Thank you to WestMED for the invitation. And I would like just to present shortly, I don't know if you can see my slides, the project Co-Evolve for Growth, but especially focusing on the points that are relevant maybe for the discussion of this afternoon. Co-Evolve for BG is financed by the ENI CBCMED program, and is focused on the ICZM approach.
Sorry to interrupt you, Giuliano. Could you please put it in presentation mode because it's very small. We can't really read it.
Yes, sure. We put that in presentation mode. It is working now?
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, the project is focused on the ICZM approach, that is a very wide approach for the coastal zone in the Mediterranean. As you know, it's under the Barcelona Convention framework as well. And the point I want to underline is that Co-Evolve for Growth is the application of a previous project that is Co-Evolve, that was an INTRAGMED project that ended last year, and that developed an approach for the sustainability of many different issues for coastal sustainability, and mainly for which we are interested in the Co-Evolve for Growth project for tourism. Coevolve Grow has been labeled by FM inside a more wide framework that was developed by the cooperation with different regions and partners, and especially supported by CRPM CIM, that is the main cooperation framework in which we are working for development of this common approach. Coevolve Grow want to apply to other countries the experiences that were made in the Coevolve first project, and also coordinated with another project that is Med Cost for Growth, that also has been developed by CRPM and other partners around the Mediterranean. Main partners of the Coevolve for Growth project come from different countries of the Mediterranean: Tunisia, Italy, Greece, Spain, and Lebanon. And the lead partner is INSTM from Tunisia. We have also today with us Mr. Bashir Bejouaï, that is the coordinator of the project for INSTM. The methodology we adopted is starts from a very wide approach, from a Mediterranean scale analysis that we have done in the first part of the project. And now we are working on 7 different pilot areas around the Mediterranean. So you can see them with the random points in the map, trying to understand what are the main threats to the coastline sustainability in the pilot areas, and then the enabling factors that can be used to push a better sustainability for the management of the coast, and especially for the work that we are doing in our pilot areas for tourism. So this is the main focus for the pilot area in Italy. I would like to focus on the work on the pilot area of Coevolve Grow in Italy, that is the Circeo National Park and Biosphere Reserve, because we are trying to work on one of the main points maybe of the discussion of today, because innovation is also a matter of capacity, local capacity from stakeholders. And for example, in our specific pilot area, stakeholders, and I mean mainly as in the tourism sector, are small stakeholders, so very small companies in general. And we are working with Coevolve in an approach that is based on the stakeholder involvement with, first of all, stakeholder analysis, and then involvement of the stakeholders in a participative process. And we're working especially at the moment with stakeholders from the tourism sector, and mainly beaches owners or hotel owners and so on. Working with them to develop an action plan that should be inside the general framework of the approach that we are adopting, but very much focused on the local needs. So trying to understand what are the limiting factors that don't allow the local stakeholders, the small enterprises, to use the experience that we developed all around the Mediterranean in different projects and with many different studies. At the end of the project, for our pilot area, we will develop also a demonstration action that will be chosen with stakeholders. We are trying to understand what is the relevant action for the stakeholders that can move something in the specific situation of the environment of companies that are working on sustainable tourism in the area of the park. This is the study area, very shortly. Another interesting thing that we are working in the same area with other projects. One is WestMED Plus that was cited before this morning. This was one of the pilot area for the first project that was developed before WestMED Plus. And we have also a very important project that is a strategic of the Interreg program, and that is WestMED, that is also developed around this area on the hills in the inner part of its study area. And these different projects are all working in the same direction, that is to try to develop the local environment of companies and different stakeholders, I mean also public stakeholders, for example, that are involved in understanding what are the needs for development of real sustainable practice around this coastal area that is very important for nature, because there is a national park, as you can see, also a big forest and a plain forest that is quite rare in Italy at the moment. But also to try to stop in some way the pressure from tourism in a coastal area like this one that has suffered very much in the past by the pressure made by the tourism for use of resources, the waters and pollution and so on. So the work is still ongoing. So we are working at the moment to develop the tables with the local stakeholders. We will focus on some of the issues because many are relevant. And in the co-evolve for grow approach methodology that was developed by our friends from Tunisia, especially, we are trying also to choose the indicators and also the most relevant issues with the stakeholders. So it is very important not just to work from a theoretical point of view, but going to work on the field and to share with stakeholders, as I said before, their needs and also the most relevant points for the development of these activities. Okay, thank you for the attention.
Thank you, Mr. Tallone, for your presentation. This leads us to the final project in the session, Profit. I welcome Ms. Isabelle Navoa to present her project.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen again. Let me know if you see it.
Yes, we see it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So a little bit of who we are. We are the International Social Tourism Organization. We have been supporting a more sustainable and fair tourism for all since 1963. We are more than 150 members in more than 40 countries. And today I would like to share with you a project that we had named Profit. Profit is for Professional Framework of Innovation in Tourism. It was an initiative founded by the European Commission as well, and it was developed in 4 coastal regions in Europe: UK, France, the Netherlands, and Belgium. The idea, what we did, is to develop a DNA of tourism for all businesses adopted by ISTO and also linked to the SDGs. It's a very, I think, the key takeaway here is the methodology behind this experience that we have. So first is getting to know ourselves, know who we are, which are our values. We also worked on a practical toolkit to inspire businesses towards innovation, mechanisms to learn more about customers, learn from best practices and masterclasses, and the co-creation of an action plan with social tourism actors. When I was talking about defining your values, of course, sustainability is behind this. It's linked to the SDGs, and we finished with these 5 values of that we call the DNA, switching from more to a better tourism, which are quality of life, accessibility, solidarity, fair business, and environment. Out of the 21 trends that we found, our working group selected 8, the 8 that you can see there. And from that selection, we defined a practical toolkit in these 4 topics: experience, animation and activities, profiling, marketing and communication, partnership and learning network, and infrastructure and daily operations. If you want to know more, of course, you can find it in our website where we have these and many other interesting documents. But I think the main takeaway was working with them to get to know themselves. So you know who you are, and then you also make a research on the customers, on what are they looking for, and you make a match between those two and design a product. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nova, for keeping to your time slot. I thank all the three speakers and for the very fruitful information that you have provided us with. Given the we are tight on time, I would like to wrap up and conclude this session. But I would like to point out three main aspects which come out from the three projects that were presented. The first is that there is clearly the need for knowledge sharing and identification of best practice to enable the sustainable innovation for the tourism SMEs. And this brings out the need to take a broader perspective beyond country borders, and also to look at to engage the local stakeholders, take also a micro level perspective to engage the local actors in this process. A second point that is clear that there is the need to enable tourism businesses to fully commit to innovation and digitalization, as this is an important factor for modernizing the entire sector, which in turn would enable the development of new services and broader and higher quality of the tourism sector. And a third point, there is a clear need for the regional incubators and accelerators, which was also pointed out in the previous sessions, for tourism enterprises, so that the sector can harness research and innovation. And then this point ties in very well with the next session, which will be dealing about the data and the other conditions which are necessary to enable sustainable solutions within the tourism sector. So I know Stephanie will come back to moderate the next session.
Thank you, Annabelle. So this leads us into the third session, which we have in terms of how innovation can foster enabling conditions. And we would like to focus on two main aspects in this regard. The first is on the use of data, on tourism-related data, for which there is a wealth of data which is available, but it's very important to harness this data and use this data in an effective manner in order to feed into policy making and effective policy making. And the second one, in terms of an enabling condition, is the very important role that territories and local communities have. So there has to be obviously buy-in from a lower level at a more micro level in order for innovation to be kind of filtered from a more practical aspect. And with that, we've got two very short interventions by two projects, Herit Data, where we have Mr. Alessandro Monti, and we also have Tourist SME, where we have Miss Michelle Perello, who will deliver a very short presentation. It would be very interesting to see how these two projects have been very instrumental in terms of being part of the conditions which have enabled innovation to kind of feature in these projects. So, Mr. Alessandro Monti.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. I'll try immediately to share my screen, and in the meanwhile, I thank you all of you for being here and the chance to present the Herit Data project. So, just a second. Okay. Okay, you should see my screen, right?
Yes, right.
Okay, now I'm. Do you see the full screen, or are you seeing the presenter?
Yes, thanks.
I mean, do you see just one slide or both slides? One on the left and one on the right. Which one of the two?
We see one slide in presentation mode.
Fantastic. And do you see the slide going on?
Yes.
Fantastic. Sorry. Okay, now we can start. So thanks again for being here, for inviting me here. I'm Alessandro Monti. I belong to the foundation of the University of Florence, one of the partners of the project Eridata. So overall, what's the project about? The idea of Eridata is to try to mitigate the impacts of tourists by means of data, open data, big data, smart data, and ICT tools. How? Simply trying to exploit this data and these tools to in some way inform tourists, orient them, make them aware, and change their behavior. And one of the key aspects I want to stress out of the project, it's not only the data and the tools, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, a lot of things, yes, but stakeholders. This was a key point of success. The involvement of many stakeholders, such as the municipality of Florence, which we thank for their support, the Metropolitan City of Florence, the Tuscany region, which is the leading partner of the project, okay? And this is a key point, since in order for this to work out, the ecosystem has to work together in a very good, efficient way. I won't give you too much, let's say, information you can find in other places about the project. Let's say that in the end, what we did was preparing 6 pilots in 6 different countries, project countries, partner countries. And in each of these pilots, we start testing the use of data to start communicating both with the tourists, but also with stakeholders, to allow them to take decisions, to allow them to exploit this data and orient behavior, like I said at the beginning. So what I'm showing you here is the pilots developed in Florence. And what I'm showing you is the use of the Wi-Fi access point. Whenever someone enters the city, they start to use the data, the Wi-Fi, sorry, in order to get data to navigate, to surf the web, and so on. In this way, I'm showing you how in the UNESCO area, it was possible to build heat maps. And in this way, it was possible in real time to know how many people were in a certain part of the city, and by means of that, start to push them someplace else, by means of banners, pushing, and so on, that were delivered to them by means of an application, Feel Florence, that was developed by the municipality of Florence, and it was synergized with the project. This is another very interesting thing we did, the sentiment analysis. This was an accident that happened some years ago in Florence that gave us the idea of developing the sentiment analysis based on the tweeters that were produced by tourists. In here you see a big problem in the UNESCO site near Ponte Vecchio, and the guy there is our mayor, okay? So this was the first time we understood how suddenly people start tweeting about this in a very heavy way, providing us so many information about where something was happening, what was happening, and we could also profile who was interacting about this. So this idea gave us the idea to develop within Eridata the Twitter sentiment analysis to start providing information to the public administration about what were going on in the city during something. And we tested these during the pandemic. Unfortunately, not on tourists, they were not here, but we have a huge event, a huge manifestation regarding the issue about the restriction and the lockdown we were experiencing in Italy. So on the 13th of October 2020, we decided to test all we did on this event, and it was fantastic since it was possible. As you can see from the peak, suddenly all this information regarding Florence with specific keywords we decided to choose provided us many information about the feeling of the people, and we were able to segment the different kind of people. I mean, the people who were manifesting and the citizens who were, let's say, passive subjects that were in some way submitted to this to this very complex event. So this was another thing that was tested, and it gave us the idea that sentiment analysis can be a very strong instrument and set of data to be used to try to orient behavior. Another part, the final one we tested, is a set of new ways of interacting with tourists, and one of them was the nudging. This is another part of the experimentation we are still conducting in Florence, and nudging means providing information in a very smart way in order for the tourists to be convinced, to be in some way compelled to do something differently. The idea is to try to make them understand that you do not have to overcrowd a certain part of the city, not only for the problems you cause to the city or to that specific area, but also for you. Probably if you want to change your behavior, you want to have a good experience of Florence, you want to see what you want to see, and maybe you are missing something that is even more interesting to you. So the last development will be to push this experimentation in the next few months. And moreover, we will also start an influencer marketing campaign in order to make people aware of our application and all the information they can find in our city by means of our, let's say, many ICT tools developed thanks to the WestMED project Data. These are my reference if someone wants to get in touch. Before closing, I'd like to stress a couple of things very interesting related to data. Data are a great pool of innovation. And some of the previous speakers, Matteo, Lucenzo, and Jordi, spoke about startups, new companies. We held a specific session about this during Data, specifying how these kind of players, they can be the perfect catalyst to trigger new requests for data and new way of exploiting data into the city. So thanks again. I hope I've been in perfect windows. Now I will try to unshare my screen, which is always the hardest part of WebEx. Okay, did it?
Thank you very much.
Thank you again. I'm available for any kind of question and so on.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. That was a very good presentation. I think you really highlighted the very important role of social media, which really has to be used as an integral part of promoting not only sustainable tourism in terms of the provision of supply and what is available, but also probably more importantly in terms of driving and changing behavior, which would actually lead to an increase in demand for sustainable tourism. So it's definitely a platform which has to be really an integral part of the digitalization of the tourism sector. Going now to the second part of this session, so I invite Ms. Michelle Perello.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation. Please let me know if you are already seeing my screen. You should,
yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes, we are.
Wonderful. Just a second. I try to share it from here. Okay, great. So I am presenting here the Tourism project, which is actually kind of sister project of the Turban initiative, which was presented in the session, in the previous session. So Tourism is also a COSME project, which started actually last year and will end in 2023. And our main objective is to promote the adaptation of European tourism SMEs towards more sustainable, low carbon and resource efficient business models. So we have actually 3 specific objectives. The first one is to build capacities of SMEs and their capacity to network and collaborate with their peers and with other stakeholders across the tourism value chain. The second objective is to take up innovative solutions that boost sustainable practices and circular business model among SMEs. And the third one, which differentiate us maybe from other projects under the same call, is that we try to facilitate access to certification scheme and other EC initiatives to SMEs such as EMAS, EDEN, and the EU Eco Label. So we are, as in the case of Turban, we are working with specific regions in Europe. You see here the full list of partners. So we are working in particular in Canary Islands, where we are based, in Sardinia, in Italy, and then in the Paris region, Paris area in France, and in Italy we are involving also like a more knowledge partner, which is Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna, and then in Cyprus we have another pilot area which is managed by the Nicosia Development Agency. So we are targeting those areas, and in these areas we have launched a call for SMEs, which I will present. But before talking about that, since the focus of this session is about data and stakeholder involvement, the overall approach of tourism, just one second, yeah, the overall approach of tourism was actually to try to understand what are the barriers and the motivation for SMEs while trying to implement sustainable practices. And we aim at understanding those barriers, talking with the different stakeholders which compose the tourism value chain. So the first part of activities have been devoted to build a kind of knowledge base to identify and exploit the key driver of sustainable growth within the tourism industry. And in that sense, we have on one side identified best practices, and on the other side we have made a survey among different stakeholders in the tourism industry, specifically to understand what were the barriers on one side and what were the motivation, and also which were the type of sustainable practices that SMEs find more interesting or more relevant. Based on this knowledge base, we are in the process of formulating transnational and cross-sectorial schemes for training on one side, for matchmaking events on the other, and then as transversal area to support the implementation of certification, environmental certifications for SMEs. So this is, I would say, the core part of the project activities actually, and the way in which SMEs will be able to access this training and matchmaking services and this mentoring and support to access environmental certification is through a call for proposal for SMEs, which we have actually already launched, and it is closed. We are in the process of awarding this financial support to 62 SMEs. Just one second. The SMEs that will be funded actually comes from three particular categories, which are hotels and similar accommodation, holiday and other short stay accommodation, and then travel agencies, tour operator, reservation service, and related activities. So basically, we received more than 150 applications from SMEs, and we will grant to 62 a sort of voucher which will support them in accessing training, matchmaking events, and in particular environmental certification. What is interesting is that SMEs could actually choose between the different activities that they could request support for, and trainings and matchmaking activities were a compulsory activity, while access to environmental certification was a free activity that they could choose, but they were not obliged to. And actually almost, I would say, 95% of the SMEs that requested support included the request for support for environmental certification, which was actually the smaller, let's say, part of the overall grant that we are assigning to SMEs. So this tells us that there is really a big, I would say, interest from SMEs in accessing environmental certifications. So we are currently now in the process of assigning the grants, and so we are not able to provide much more information on that. But on the other side, I would invite all the assistants, the participants to visit our website, where you will see the article that we have produced as a result of the survey, of the analysis that we have made with all the tourism value chain stakeholders. And on the other side, the compendium of good practices that we have identified that present concrete sustainable practices from SMEs that you see here are organized per sector, which were the main, let's say, fields that we have identified in our analysis. And very soon we will be able to share information about the type of SMEs that have applied, so that we will be able also to provide a wider overview on the participation to the call that we have organized. So this is all from my side. I hope I've been respecting the time limit.
Yes, thank you very much, Michelle. Very much so. I'd like to invite the participants in terms of if you have any questions which you would like to pose to any of the speakers which we had today. So if we have any questions, we can take those because we've managed to zone in a bit on the time. But in the meantime, maybe I have a question which is really more generic across the three areas which we have discussed today. But what do you envisage as being the kind of main bottlenecks which really suppress the extent to which innovation is adopted within the tourism sector? So, for example, when it comes to SMEs, and the very important role that SMEs have, which we've discussed in the Tourism project and in other projects, what are the main challenges which SMEs face, and maybe possibly even more micro firms? I would think that their inability to kind of reap economies of scale sort of limits also their inability to invest in research and therefore engage in innovative activities. So what are the main bottlenecks that you see in this regard, and how can they actually be overcome? If we have any speakers who would like to intervene on this particular question?
Yeah, if you allow me, from the survey that we carried out with SMEs, basically almost 80% of SME responded that lack of funds are like the main reason for not adopting sustainable practices, and this was followed by lack of skilled staff. So skilled human resources that can support implementation of sustainable practices. And the third element was difficulties in accessing collaboration with other SMEs or with other supporting organizations that could actually help in the implementation of the practices.
And if I may,
yes, please.
too, okay.
Yes, Alessandro.
I agree with Michelle completely. And moreover, at least here in Italy, especially in Tuscany, what we saw is that sometimes SMEs have the ideas and they also have the money, but they don't push innovation, since in order to do that, they should have certainties about the market. And the market, most of the time, is in the hands of public administrations, which, they need to go public before acquiring a solution. So the risks is very high, and sometimes that can be bureaucratic or administrative. In such a sense, I think that probably a project like the WestMED, but many other frameworks, could really help. I saw today a lot of grants granted to companies. That could be a key point, at least pushing them toward a better final solution, and maybe they can try to participate in a more secure situation, less risky situation into tenders or something like that. I mean, you have to level down the risks they have to incur before getting a final solution.
Thank you, Alessandro.
Maybe
Matteo?
no, I think we'll be, given that we have another 10 minutes or so before moving to the close-up session on governance. I wonder if any participants from the previous two sessions on diversification of tourism and an acceleration of innovation, just raise your hand. You don't have to, but if you want to, we are happy to see additional answer to this question. So the bottleneck, but maybe what are the bottlenecks to diversification? What are the bottlenecks to even for investment, maybe to be willing to put more money into SMEs, etc. It's really an open question to all participants, and just raise your hand or just take the floor.
Yeah. So as a small tour operator, yeah, I agree with what you said. The reasons why it's hard to implement or have a eco certification. It's also lack of time. I think in tourism, you're basically running around with many tasks, and these things also take time. So it's lack of capacity, lack of time also. This is from my experience. I mean, I think many companies understand the need, but there's many things going on at the same time, you know.
Which is, we say that this is mainly a very micro based, even not SMEs, and we know that the quarterly check pressuring and maybe that's a priority, and it's very difficult to access to innovation. Because we were wondering, you know, we're discussing this in the frame of the upcoming call, or actually the open call by Sinea, as introduced by Anya, and obviously we wanted to see, you know, how to support really project proposals that might address partially this. I don't know, maybe Giuliano, I just see you, and sorry to put you on the spot, but maybe from the point of view, it would be nice to see a point of view of a local, regional authorities in a way, dealing a lot with these issues. I mean, because I guess this is what you try to do, no, to support the SMEs, but what is the challenge for authorities to do so?
I agree quite a lot with Chantal that probably there is very small dimension of many MIs is a big problem. Because the reasons she underlines, like the very few time that they can allow to innovation or to think about the future of their company, because they have to do a lot during all the day, so they have very few resources to invest in development. And maybe this can be in some way supported by the action of the regional DMOs, and also where they are present by the local DMOs that can help to share also the information about not only the available funding, but also the experiences that can be led to a change in the single company. So I think this is quite a big issue. At least in our situation, this very small dimension of many of these companies.
Okay, because you say that because we are presenting, I mean, there's quite a lot of very good, and we're very pleased for your whole presentation. There's quite a lot of different angles where projects support acceleration. They put money on company they want to upscale. They provide support in terms of skills and training. We were wondering if maybe even a basic support to access of good cases, good practice, business model, business cases, where SMEs in between their very tight activities and willing to come after the end of a quarter with a profit or not a loss, whether they can be exposed to good practice that can, you know, inspire them to innovate and diversify. So maybe starting from a basic sharing of what is doable, what has been done elsewhere in the Med. And of course, I think a lot about North-South sharing and cooperation. I wonder that it could be a good starting point for really upscaling, you know, the basic capacity and even ability to look forward in what's feasible for sustainable business, sustainable destination.
Just a note. Yes, you have to work in both directions, by the destination point of view and by the company point of view, that are quite different, probably.
Yes. Okay. So both in both cases, showcasing good example of authorities and business that manage to. Okay. I wonder if there's any other question or open remarks. Otherwise, I leave it back to Steph. And thanks a lot, all of you. It was a very interesting ride.
Yes, thank you, Matteo. I have maybe one question which really leads us into the next area, really on the terms of regional governance. But we've discussed sort of the very important role that at a local level and the SMEs, you know, and companies can have and in this respect. But a very important element, I think, in terms of driving sustainable tourism is really from the policy making side as well. And we've kind of seen an element of that, for example, through the Encircle project, where we're looking at policy making in different areas, whether it's energy, water, for example, and how this obviously feeds in as well into the tourism sector. So I think an equally important part is obviously the SMEs and, you know, regional governance and so on, but also there's the element of government and policy making in terms of driving sustainable tourism as well. And that, I think, leads us into the one of the final sessions which we have, which is really related to supporting regional governance. And I will leave the floor to Thanos from the WestMED, who will be moderating the session.
Thank you, Steph, and all. Actually, we have heard so far a lot of interested ongoing initiatives focusing on different aspects of tourism and how to promote sustainable tourism. Actually, I hope this feedback could trigger a lot of stakeholders to apply for the upcoming MFAF call that was presented before. As already discussed, and it was really interesting to hear the last exchanges, in this session we would like to touch the governance perspective and what is needed for an effective regional governance. I would like to touch upon a recent report published by UFM, Union for Mediterranean, towards a sustainable blue economy in the Mediterranean, where it was demonstrated that there is a clear need for structural changes towards a more ecologically sustainable and socially resilient models, which are grounded on local strengths and assure domestic returns. So to highlight the local perspectives. Of course, there are a number of challenges, like impacts of current unsustainable business models, natural ecosystems, and of course, the recent significantly affected pandemic, that tourism was affected by COVID pandemic. But we would like to discuss which are the opportunities that we need to focus towards a sustainable recovery. Could be the biodiversity and the environment, the local values. So we have the honor to have with us today in the panel the head of sector of environment and blue economy for Union for Mediterranean, Ms. Alessandra Sensi, Jamil Ouazani from Confederation International Ports Pleasance of Mediterranean, and Claudia Kremer from Marine Regions Forum. Actually, this session will be most an exchange discussion mode format than presentations. So I would like to give the floor to Alessandra as a first speaker and asking her opinion on the role of regional governance to foster sustainable tourism and how collaboration in the region could be further promoted and what UFM is doing towards this direction. Please, Alessandra.
Many thanks, Thanos, and many thanks to everybody. It has been really very inspiring to hear all the previous speakers, and again, you know, together towards, you know, the definition of the next steps. In a certain way, let's say all the technical aspects have been touched upon. I'd like actually to start by referring, as we are focusing on the policy part, on the very first reference made by DG Mare and in particular by Manuel Alonso this morning about the Ministerial on Sustainable Blue Economy. This is the very first UFM ministerial where sustainable tourism is actually recognized in full by all the 42 Euromed countries as a top priority area for future work. So let's say that overall, the Ministerial Declaration of 2021 has seen an enormous, let's say, expansion of the scope of the activities of the 42 around the blue economy, And we think that there's a specific reference to tourism and all the challenges that it implies, you know, again, from sectorial strategies to seasonality over tourism, all what was mentioned today, digitalization. It's in a certain way the most important reference. And this actually goes to the governance model that we have been, let's say, using up to now, which dates back to 2015. In a certain way, already there, when we had the first ministerial, we have been, let's say, building a cooperation within the region through what we call the UFM working group, with a clear understanding that this group would have served the countries, of course, as immediate beneficiaries, but also would have been, let's say, a broad forum for other partners to be represented. This is, in fact, how it has developed over time. I think one very solid recognition of blue economy is that it's one of the most inclusive, actually, dossier in the region, where indeed the specific different stakeholders categories are represented. Of course, I mean, also due to the COVID crisis and being tourism one of the most affected sector and being at the same time one of the priority economic sector of the region, we have also been doing, let's say, some important reflection, and it's very clear that the local dimension is more and more to be integrated. This is why actually we, together with CPRM, launch the idea of putting together, let's say, an handbook which could serve indeed the purpose of systematizing in a certain way all the ideas, novelty, potential, and opportunities that even today have been shown. I mean, how all this incredible, let's say, bunch of information, reflections, but also experience can be in a certain way systematized. We accompany also the process at regional level because, of course, our focus is within the broad region with capacity building activities. We had also, let's say, in June, a webinar dedicated to digitalization in the tourism sector. You mentioned also the very important milestone report, I would say, on towards sustainable blue economy, which has been built around the 10, let's say, priorities identified by the 42 countries, which indeed includes tourism and, let's say, tackles different sectors also from, let's say, other perspective, including, of course, employment, which is one main overall, let's say, challenge that the region is facing. We, apart from the working group, as you know, we also base ourselves, let's say, on a stakeholders conference that take place on a regular basis. And this is something that has been also in a certain way applied also at WestMED level. Next week, there will be indeed this important conference, and the UFM is actually taking part to the steering committee of important, let's say, more sub-regional initiatives, indeed WestMED, BlueMed, PanoraMed, many others, as well as being in direct contact with the managing authorities. InterregMed, CBC are really the typical case of very important and drivers actually of projects and activities in the region to indeed ensure the, let's say, non-EU, the southern and eastern countries, let's say, participation, because again, the approach that we use is the Mediterranean as one. I wanted also maybe to comment on the call that has been presented, which of course represents a very important opportunity. Again, I mean, and this is also the governance role. I mean, we need to bridge with the region at large. the understanding is that this is a very important call on sustainable tourism, devoted, of course, to WestMed as privileged partnership and as accelerator in a certain way of the region, is also open, let's say, for non-Western Mediterranean countries as associates. And I'd like to mention that because this is a sort of modality that we are let's say, emphasizing again, so as to ensure that in a certain way, all the countries of the region can participate and maximize, let's say, the benefit of the joint work. So I hope this is
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alessandra.
a broad enough overview. And of course, I remain available for any possible questions.
Thank you very much, because it was really important to hear the importance of collaboration in the region and for the governance. And you gave me a very good, actually, pass to bring in the discussion Southern colleagues and Mr. Jamil Ouazani from Confederation International of Ports in the Mediterranean. We would like, we understand that you are mostly dedicated on cruising, on marine cruising and yachting, but we would like to hear from your side, your initiative and your role as a confederation and your ideas and experience in the tourism sector. Please, Mr. Ouazani.
Okay, thanks, Thanos. Good afternoon, greeting all. I'm very happy to be here. It's a very nice event. I have a presentation to you. I have to share. Wait a moment. Well, this one. Don't know. It's okay.
Starting to share the yes. Make a presentation mode, and it's perfect.
It's okay like this. Okay.
Yes.
So. My name is Jamil Ouazani, and I am the Director of Marketing and Strategic Intelligence at Tangier City Port. But I represent today CIPPM. CIPPM is the International Confederation of Mediterranean Marina, okay? Which I'm and my company are an active members. To introduce my speech, I would like to ask you a question, Thanos.
Please.
Okay, who wouldn't want to live on a clean place with a luxuriant vegetation and a crystal clear sea? This is a question, and work in the clean environment. Unfortunately, this is not possible in most cases, and we think that the population is often the main culprit. This is the first of things I would like to introduce my speech. Now I would like to present the CIPPM policy for the Mediterranean. So this action plan is a day-by-day action plan, and it is developed in several steps. You see, as a first one, we develop and facilitate the nautical tourism. So you spoke before about cruise. Yes, at Tangier City Port we have cruise, ferries, and marina, but with CIPPM we focus a lot for the marina. Okay, and so we develop and facilitate the nautical tourism, and this is very important because I was reading 2 months ago a report of a specialized consulting firm which declared that a yachting man during a stopover in a marina gives the opportunity for 30 people to work. So you see that there is a very strong contribution with yachting to the development of a region, economic region. Okay, Second things, we contribute to the balance of nautical tourism flows because the north and the south of Mediterranean. We work a lot with the Mediterranean Blue Pace to facilitate tourism in the Mediterranean area. Of course, we enhance networking of ports because we saw that speaking with all the responsible of the other ports give us an opportunity to increase our skills. It's interesting to see the best and best practice because they have the same problem of us in every part of the world. We also speak about the technology transfer. Technology is very important in our sector. And we organize with our partner some events with training, and we focus also on the customer experience of the voters. Also for the sustainability, and we represent the marina, of course, in the Mediterranean area with the international institutions, and we deal with environmental problem, protection of fauna and flora in the Mediterranean. As you see, it's a very important work, but at CPPM, we are inspiring every day and convinced for our vision and objective. But we want to focus to our work area. As you know, Mediterranean Sea is the most busiest area. I will show you after another slide for the traffic. We have 46,000 kilometers of coastline, more than 17,000 marine species, and 21 sovereign states. And at the end, we have another statistic. In 2030, the population will reach 572 million of people. So, as I told you before, we have a lot of work to do. This is a ship traffic density. I printed 3 days ago. So the red area are for the high traffic, and you see that this is a very busy sea. We think that the COVID situation has been an opportunity to reflect on what to do, what are the best and bad practice for the best environmental, social and economic sustainability. In that way, all Mediterranean countries have, we think, an invaluable opportunity to avoid past mistake in order to ensure sustainable growth for generations to come. And we work a lot to achieve these objectives. The first, with the protection of the environment, with nautical tourism comes forward on the strategic opportunity for business development and growth, with job creation, and to be connected with the people to nature. And in that way, we think that a collaboration with all the government, all the management, exploring and identifying best and bad practices are a good, and a good communication are necessary to develop a sustainable tourism. For us, it's also important North and South dialogue. So we organized in partnership with other players in the nautical tourism several events. This for having the responsibilities of the marinas, of the people who work in all the value chain in the nautical industry, to have more capability to investigate and to increase their experience of what's happening in all the Mediterranean Sea and also in other region, and also to allow networking between members. This is a good opportunity to forge closer links. You see these pictures, and I think that if you want to promote a country and to see this picture, you are not you will choose another destination. So, but it's a reality. So we are now, in particular, marine plastic pollution increasing with 260,000 tons dumped per year. This situation will scare away tourism and consequently negatively influence the development of this industry. So for us, what we have to do, it's important to have the same vision and an engagement from all the Mediterranean countries regarding sustainability and development. We think that a permanent dialogue between all the players of the maritime value chain value is important. We need also a safer and more secure maritime space. Of course, we don't have the same situation respect of other parts of the ocean, and we think that it's important also to use technology and program marketing influence campaigns to all the stakeholders and to the population, and organize events to increase awareness of this critical situation. Training days or awareness days. We organize a lot of this, and we have a good response from the population. For example, in Tangier, we organize every year several events, and we have a lot of students or families who comes and speak with leaders before someone, a representative of the WWF came. We organize a lot of things with them, and it's a very interesting because after that we see a little difference of the behavior of the people. Okay, I want to finish, and thank you for your attention. And of course, I'm here just for some.
Dear Jamil, actually, it was really interesting presentation that you just made. Actually, you tackled most of the most important aspects of tourism, even the human impact and the environmental aspects, and the importance of raising awareness. But I'm sure that through WestMED also we can collaborate in the future towards this direction and through the workshops that you are doing so. I would like now to give the floor to Claudia from Marine Regions Forum. Actually, just very recently, Marine Regions Forum had a virtual event or a workshop on supporting blue recovery through regional cooperation. So I would like to ask Claudia to provide us with the main recommendation and the results of their workshop, and of course towards how to enhance regional collaboration that it seems becoming really crucial for the Mediterranean region. So Claudia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Thanos. Thank you very much for inviting me, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Claudia Kremers. I'm a research fellow at IDRI, which is a French think tank specialized in sustainable development and international relations. And in my response to your question, I'm going to zoom out a bit from the Western Mediterranean and tell you a bit more about the Marine Regions Forum and how it can play a role in a transition to a more sustainable.
Feel free, that's why we invited you actually.
Yeah, great. So first of all, what is the Marine Regions Forum doing and why is it needed? Because I'm not sure whether everyone is aware of what the Marine Regions Forum is. So the Marine Regions Forum is an inclusive, informal, transdisciplinary dialogue and exchange platform for diverse actors from marine regions that aims to provide an informal space for joint learning and support regional action and international governance processes. The Secretariat of the Marine Regions Forum is composed of 3 think tanks, so IDRI, where I work, ISS, Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies, and TMG think tank, so 1 French think tank and 2 German think tanks. And this initiative was born out of the need to enhance multi-stakeholder and cross-sectoral collaboration within and between marine regions. And this is a need that I also heard today during the conference, that there was not enough cross-sectoral collaboration or opportunities to engage with different actors in the tourism sector. So it was actually Germany that announced this initiative to come up with the Marine Regions Forum in 2017 at the UN Ocean Conference in New York, and then together with the EU at the 2017 Ocean Conference in Malta. So they set up this platform by 2020, or that was the goal, to set it up by 2020. But already in 2019, the first conference was organized. And this first international conference was held in Berlin in 2019, and it brought together over 200 international participants from multiple sectors, stakeholder groups, and different marine regions. And we had 1 session also on tourism, which was called Towards Regional Frameworks for Sustainable Tourism. So already in 2019, we started talking about the tourism topic. And indeed, as Thanos mentioned, we've organized workshops on or webinars on the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact this pandemic has had on marine regions. And just to give you some takeaways from the tourism perspective, because we've had 1 breakout group on the tourism topic. So as we've mentioned just a few hours ago, and we all know that the marine tourism sector was severely hit by sanitary restrictions, and we were looking especially at what kind of resilience plans or how the governments were responding in different regions to the pandemic. And the participants noted that the pandemic highlighted the dependency and fragility of international tourism. And there were major differences in recovery between countries and regions, with some countries with weak economies unable to promote more sustainable tourism practices. So I would like to give 3 takeaway messages. So the first of all, the opportunities to build back better in the tourism sector that were identified were to promote small-scale and community-based tourism, to increase domestic tourism when possible, and to also build a relationship based on trust between industry and local communities. So that's one of the takeaway messages. The second takeaway message is regarding the challenges. So participants, they indicated that there's a need to align the tourism industry with the global sustainable development agenda, including sustainable development goals, biodiversity conservation targets, the Paris Agreement. And we've seen that government policies generally seem to lack progressive tourism narratives. There's also, as we've heard just before in the other presentation, a lack of monitoring and data analysis of tourism activities and the overall ecological footprint of the industry. And then thirdly, the last takeaway message that I wanted to give is that the participants in a breakout group on tourism, they said that more regional cooperation around coastal and marine tourism is needed, especially because what we've heard as well, that this sector is very much fragmented. And also from a governance perspective, we see that the sector is governed especially by economic and development ministries or the tourism ministry, rather than environment and social departments, which also shows could be a conflict of interest. There was also a need identified to establish multi-stakeholder platforms, which include large corporations, civil society, and funders that can together drive change. In conclusion, the Marine Regions Forum serves as a unique platform that can help the tourism sector move towards a more sustainable model. Of course, it's not specific to the Mediterranean region, but it provides an opportunity to exchange on lessons learned and best practices with other regions in the world. So that's why I would especially encourage you to participate in other activities that we're organizing in the future. And maybe just a last word to say that the next conference that we'll organize will have a more regional focus, but on the Western Indian Ocean, which might seem very far away from the Western Mediterranean. But perhaps there are some lessons learned or some common challenges that we can see that could be interesting to learn about.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you very much. Actually, you touched the three important points: the local aspects, and how to build on providing the domestic value. Of course, the importance of having funds and investments in the region, which is really important. Before moving to the next part, I would like to give the floor back to Alessandra Sensi for a very quick comment from UFM side. So please, Alessandra.
Yes,
And then we move
I was a
forward.
bit enlightened also by the other speakers. What I wanted actually to add to what they say is that just on the 4th of October, we had approved the second ministerial on environment and climate action, which is of course particularly important also in view of what is being decided in Glasgow. And it's also a very important text which among others as a specific reference also to tourism sector as contributor actually to this transition. We also launched within the environment the Greener Med agenda, which indeed specifically tackles all these environmental aspects and let's say the effort in terms of coordination and implementation at regional level of all the actions so that the projects can in a certain way extend their sustainability over time is indeed there, and it's one of our main target. I'd like to conclude by also referring to the fact that a lot of resources have been invested in the Med Blue Economy platform, which still remain a very important node for information, but also for exchanges among actors and also for training tools. So these should be taken into account. We have there not just, events, but also reference, of course, to projects, not just to the label project like the one that was also presented by Giuliano before, Cobol for Blue Growth, Bashiri, it's also there. They're also producing a lot of important, let's say, information related to integrated coastal zone management and maritime spatial planning applied to the tourism sector, both at national and regional level, which will be made available, but will give also the opportunity to different, let's say, set of stakeholders to, in a certain way, find each other within the region. So this is something, again, to be kept in mind because it's a tool for stakeholders, so let's say coordination. And on the point on cross-sectoriality, the characteristic of this working group on blue economy is indeed that not just one ministry is represented, but what is very interesting is that at national level, each country is represented by the ministry which represents its own priorities. So even if among different countries, there is an incredible level of exchange, which has never happened before at regional level between different, let's say, perception and priorities. So this has helped a lot in advancing, let's say, the dossier also within the region. I'll close with this and thank you very much and sorry for the extra time.
Thank you, Alexandra. Actually, it was really important to hear all the comments from the three speakers. And now I would like to bring in the discussion under the same perspective, but the public-private partnership and how it could support new forms of tourism and ensure a long-term vision and financial sustainability that it's really important nowadays. So I would like to discuss the importance of regional cooperation, north-south, but also south-south, and what are the bottlenecks and main concerns towards a more sustainable model. So I would like to bring in the discussion Ms. Esther Martinez from Malaga Chamber of Commerce, and which is member of ASCAME, and Elodine Nunez from CPMR to discuss on this aspect. So Esther, what do you think are the main opportunities for public-private partnership to support sustainable tourism innovation? The floor is yours. We can't hear you. You are maybe muted. We still cannot hear you. I don't know. Maybe Elodie, you take over, and we have Esther later on. So please, Elodie, what are the main challenges and obstacles currently presenting a strong public-private partnership for sustainable tourism innovation? Feel free.
Thank you, Thanos. I hope you can hear me well. Well, thanks first of all for inviting me. I've been following the discussions throughout the day, and I'm wondering what I can bring more to the table because very interesting things have been said already.
True,
But
true.
well,
Lot
to
of
answer your
experience.
question, and I will take the opportunity also to present a bit what the CPMR is. We are an association of regions throughout Europe, and we are divided into different geographical sea basins. So in the Mediterranean, I am in charge of following the activities of the Mediterranean, and we've been working with lots of people that are present here today, actually, on the topic of the sustainability of tourism via territorial cooperation, but also via different kinds of lobbying actions and discussions with Euro-Mediterranean institutions. So that brings me to, to answer the question regarding public-private partnerships. It's true that the reality is quite complex. Working with regional administrations, we are aware that sometimes it's not that easy to reach out to the private sector, especially because, as it has been mentioned already, the tourism sector is a very fragmented sector, even more so in the Mediterranean. You have big enterprises, you also have SMEs or very small enterprises, sometimes family business. So it's quite hard, at least from the public administrations, to reach out to all those kinds of actors and have a concerted action towards, well, improving the sector, basically. So I might repeat some things that have been said already, but my guess is that fragmentation is one of the big challenges. And this is why an integrated approach to tackling the obstacles that the sector is facing regarding sustainability should be observed. Not only the integrated approach, so working hand in hand with subsectors of the tourism, but also in a transversal way, because tourism in the end is also linked to transportation, is also linked to energy, is also linked to food ecosystems. So we need to work on the different dimensions that also nourish tourism somehow in order to make it more sustainable. And it's easy said, much harder to implement, I am aware, but that would be one of the main recommendations I would say. There's another point I think that the pandemic has taught us or has given us maybe the opportunity to think about is the shift of schemes, because so far, and it's some things that I've heard also throughout the day today, when we talk about the recovery of the sector, we imply that we are addressing areas that have been negatively impacted. So in terms of economic resources or in terms of social aspects. But I'm wondering if we think about the environmental dimension, because my feeling when we were in a lockdown is that the environment was super happy. So does it need to recover, or has it had a need over the decades to recover, and then it was the opportunity when we were in lockdown for nature and biodiversity to finally breathe a bit? So what do we do of this? We want the tourism recovery, but what do we do with the other aspect that wants to keep, a better health, I would say. So the shift of schemes, I would say that it should maybe try to focus a bit our sights to a different kind of economy. There is social economy that exists. There is also circular economy that are practices that we need also to implement within the tourism sector, because we already saw that massification of tourism or the current or previous current model is still not the right way to go and keep going with that. So it's important to think about that change. Domestic tourism also is a good point to put emphasis on. I mean, we saw with with the pandemic that people in the end could still go on holidays and nourish the tourism sector, but rather in a domestic way, visiting their own country maybe for the first time instead of going abroad. And that has also had positive externalities on the environment and on sustainability in the broader sense. That leads us to a better valorization of territorial assets. We have great Mediterranean culture. We have a great Mediterranean diet that also is labelized by the UN as immaterial heritage. So it's something that we should take the opportunity to put emphasis on. And going back to the demassification of tourism, I think that mass tourism, it's not a fatality, you know, it doesn't need to happen necessarily. It's rather a consequence of deregulation. And tourism being so fragmented is a bit one of the consequences too. Everyone has grown in its own area, in its own niche, and then we end up with lots of people, lots of things happening, and no real coordination, nor taking into consideration what the others are doing in terms of impacts, in terms of ideas, etc. So that brings me to the need, and I think Alessandra also mentioned that earlier, the need to use capitalization of what has been done already. In terms of project, we had lots of projects presented today. So what do we do then with the results that have been presented? What do we do when we are a public administration or when we are a private actor to concretely take these results, take this research and implement it in my public policy, in my private strategy as an enterprise? How do I do this? So one of the other challenges is also what kind of actors or what kind of dynamics can we use to impulse, you know, this last step of implementing what we already have available as data, as practices, and so on and so forth. And lastly, two last elements. Well, the role of citizens is also something that enters in the panorama for us. In between the public and private, there's also civil society and citizens. So the conscientization of how the citizens can act, you know, when you're on holidays or when you travel for tourism, basically how do you feel entitled, and how do we make people feel entitled to their own responsibility towards the greening and more sustainable tourism. And lastly, well, the digitalization has been mentioned already. Of course, it's one of the main pillars that we'll be working on in the future altogether. Let me just recall that digitalization itself also needs to be green. It means that from the very beginning of the value chain, digitalization, if we use some kinds of technologies, the production itself of these technologies needs to be green. And sometimes we don't necessarily have the transparency or the visibility on how these projects have been created, or how, you know, people that have worked to create this product have been treated, and so on and so forth. So it's important to have transparency in this matter, and so that we are logical and coherent when we talk about sustainability. And that's basically my last words.
Thank you,
So,
Elodie. Actually, you touch upon a lot of different things, I would say, different policies, circular economy, the human impact, citizens' role, the domestic values that we need to have, of course, digitalization and environment, and the importance of environment. And something really important was the capitalization that you touched upon, and maybe we need to find a way to accelerate all the ideas and that have come out and the experience out of all these projects. So it's something to consider in the region. So now I would like to give the floor to Esther. Hopefully she's back and she can hear us and we can hear her. So from Malaga Chamber of Commerce to give us their perspective on public-private partnership. Esther, can you hear us? Can we hear you? No.
No, we can't hear.
Now we can hear you. Esther,
yes.
We can hear you now. Esther, we can hear you now. No.
Yes, I'm Sheva.
Or maybe it was a translation.
Ah, maybe.
But if you remove your headphones, maybe.
Maintenant, on m'entend maintenant?
Ahora, Esther, ahora, Esther.
Merci beaucoup. Désolé des problèmes techniques. Et merci premièrement à WestMED pour l'invitation, à l'ASCAME, à la Chambre de commerce de Malaga, à participer dans ce intéressant webinaire. Notre implantation, on a beaucoup pensé avec Thalys et je crois que ce que je voudrais partager avec vous principalement, c'est un exemple de partenariat dans la destination de tourisme. Je crois que c'est un bel exemple. Je suis sûre qu'il y en a plus international, mais pas aussi comme il y aurait à voir peut-être. Dans ce sens, je voudrais vous expliquer qu'à Malaga, il y en a plusieurs organismes qui travaillent le tourisme. Il y a les mairies, dépendant de la mairie, elles travaillent plus ou moins le tourisme. Il y a les chambres de commerce de Malaga. Il y a aussi un organisme que c'est l'organisme de planification touristique de la région de Malaga, de la province. Il y a aussi l'agence de l'Andalousie, de toute la région. Ben, ce que je voudrais vous raconter, c'est qu'ici à Malaga, il y a plus de 10 ans, dans la mairie de Malaga et dans l'organisme de planification de toute la région, il y a une totale collaboration entre le secteur public et le secteur privé. Il y a toutes les associations du tourisme qui sont impliquées à l'heure d'avoir des décisions, des décisions en commun. Donc, il y a l'association des hôtels, d'agences de voyage, du golf, des campings, de l'hôtellerie, des rent-a-car, sont toutes incluses dans les formules de décision des deux organismes. Aussi, dans la Chambre de commerce, il y en a notre forum, cette fois-ci avec les grandes entreprises du tourisme. Pas les associations, mais les grandes. Donc, je croyais que c'était un bel exemple pour montrer comment on peut avoir les décisions entre tous. Dans ce genre, il y a aussi des tables de travail sectoriel dans ce cas, comme par exemple la table de tourisme de nature, ou la table de tourisme de soleil et plage, ou celle de tourisme culturel, dans lesquelles sont les principales entreprises toujours de chaque matière incluses dans les décisions qu'on a dans la ville et dans la région de Malaga. En travaillant sur ce modèle, on est arrivé, il n'y a pas beaucoup de temps, dans un modèle de destination touristique intelligente. Les destinations intelligentes, ce sont un travail qui a fait le secrétariat d'État au tourisme du gouvernement de l'Espagne et qui a beaucoup d'intérêt entre les nombreuses destinations parce que on croit que c'est bien le futur pour le tourisme, car on a une spéciale attention, on fait une spéciale attention dans ces destinations, dans les domaines de la gouvernance, dans laquelle on est en train de parler juste maintenant, de l'innovation, si on a aujourd'hui parlé sur elle, la durabilité, surtout c'est centré sur la durabilité, la technologie et l'accessibilité. Donc, même la ville et même la province, elles sont en train de travailler pour arriver à être des destinations intelligentes. Et dans ce sens aussi, je crois que c'est important aussi à le partager avec vous. Quand on parle de durabilité, de choisir des segments, quand on parle de centrer, disons, le tourisme sur des segments déterminés, peut-être moins de quantité de touristes et qui font moins de pression négative, disons, mais avec plus de qualité, on se trouve toujours avec le besoin d'information et de traitement de cette information. Pour cela, on est en train de travailler, on a déjà mis en œuvre un projet sur le tourisme de Big Data. Comme ça, les entreprises de la province de Malaga, elles ont l'occasion d'avoir l'information filtrée totalement à jour de quel nombre de touristes vont arriver, de quelle manière, où ils vont se loger, quel impact ils vont nous poser, de manière que les entreprises puissent travailler
dans ce sens pour la planification et les actions de la destination. Et quant aux bonnes pratiques de collaboration régionale entre le nord et le sud, nord-nord et sud-sud, aussi je voudrais raconter, la Chambre de commerce travaille depuis plus de 10 ans avec l'ASCAM. L'ASCAM, c'est l'association des chambres de commerce de la Méditerranée. Et elle représente les intérêts du secteur privé de la Méditerranée. Donc, elle réunit, disons, tous les pays qui sont dans l'Europe, l'Afrique et le Moyen-Orient qui partagent la mer Méditerranéenne. Et elle développe des actions stratégiques visant à accroître la coopération et les échanges économiques entre les pays méditerranéens. Dans ce cas, on travaille beaucoup sur le secteur touristique et on a fait cette année précisément une étude sur le tourisme durable. Et les principales conclusions, plusieurs desquelles sont déjà, on a parlé ici, c'était pour les entreprises le besoin de faire des plans d'affaires qui impliquent le respect des objectifs du développement durable. Il y a plusieurs personnes comme aujourd'hui et comme Isabelle Novoa qui nous ont parlé du besoin d'avoir des objectifs clairs pour les entreprises. Trouver aussi des fonds, on a déjà parlé aussi, ils n'ont pas toujours les fonds nécessaires pour le faire. La mise en œuvre des certifications de durabilité ou des voies de collaboration entre les entreprises et les régions de la Méditerranée. Et quant aux destinations, aussi on peut nommer le besoin d'avoir des stratégies de tourisme durable réelles et actuelles. Je dis ça parce que c'est une des choses qu'on a trouvé dans l'étude, que chaque pays est encore dans un niveau et va à un rythme différent quant au tourisme durable. Il y a beaucoup qui encore ne l'ont pas dans leur politique de tourisme publiée et bon, c'est très différent d'un pays à l'autre. Aussi de créer des produits touristiques durables et concréter l'attraction du tourisme de qualité. Si vous êtes intéressé à connaître cette étude, vous devez seulement l'indiquer et je vous l'enverrai avec plaisir. Merci.
Thank you very much, Esther. Actually, it was really nice to hear also from your side, as also Elodie referred to the integrated approach that we need to have for a sustainable tourism, and of course to understand the role of ASCAME, and that Malaga Chamber of Commerce is member, towards the sustainable development. So I would like now, as we are heading to the end, to ask Stephanie and Matteo maybe to have a closing here, and if there's any question that can come from the participants, feel free to ask any question. So please.
Thank you, Thanos. Yes, well, as part of the wrap-up, before I leave also the floor to Matteo and to you in terms of the conclusion, I think there were three very, very important aspects which came out from the webinar today. I think the first one is that reaching out at all the different levels in terms of the governance as well is really not an easy task, but really bringing stakeholders together is a very key and important aspect in terms of developing creative solutions, which we have really been, which has been attested today. And it's these creative solutions which are really the ones which are required in terms of them being beneficial to the region. So this element of bringing stakeholders together is definitely a very important element, and it is something which the WestMED really tries to achieve in terms of bringing all of the stakeholders together, and something which will continue to happen also with the stakeholder conference that we have coming up next week. The second point, I think, is that there really, I mean, even on the basis of the projects which we have seen today, there's clearly a number of best practices, and there are quite a significant number of projects which have been developed on sustainable tourism and which can be replicated really and capitalized on. And this really ties in as well with the EMFAF call as well, which really tries to hone in on in terms of building the resilience and the recovery of the sector. But in doing so, it also calls for projects which have already been doing this and also capitalizing as well on existing projects. So I think that is another very important point which has come out today. And I think the third one, which to me is very interesting, is that we really, we've been talking a lot about sustainability, greening the sector, but really to be committed to it and to really showcase on how this is really being done. We really need measurable ways of how to actually green and make the sector sustainable. And this obviously ties in as well with the very important use of data and indicators, using this data to ensure that there's not only transparency in it, but that there's also accountability of it, and making sure that this is also embedded as well within policy making as well. So I think those are the three main points which I have really taken away from today's webinar. I would also like to thank everybody for participating. I leave the floor now to Matteo, maybe just to provide a couple of concluding points as well.
Yes, yes, thank you very much, Steph, and all. So, indeed, thank you all for joining, for sharing your valuable time in this period, which is so dense of duties and initiatives. It's impressive. I mean, it was a collective fatigue to organize it, I guess, but on your side as well, because but it really shows that we had up to 70 people in this discussion, and we have a lot of brain power and a lot of expertise to be mobilized. So my reflection would be, as we say, that one of the critical elements is how to provide operators and administration across the Med with good practice. Capitalization is key. Then there are two ways, at least in our intention and what we see in organizing this event, two ways for capitalization of all this practice and beyond. One is as we say, I mean, the UFM handbook and CPMR supported this initiative, the handbook for sustainable tourism. We understand that can also capitalize with all what we said and this expertise, and maybe make reference to some of you. But certainly further reflect on and reflecting on this cumulative experience. And two, I mean, obviously in our intention, the Western Mediterranean EMFAF call on sustainable green destination is the good opportunity to capitalize on all this practice and maybe bring together expertise from across a range of projects in offering some knowledge and support to the business and the operator that in the sector that are struggling to even access basic understanding of what are the challenges and opportunities. So we see these two possible way ahead for the discussion that we have. Of course, as WestMED, we support both initiatives. And also, I mean, we all invite you to further discuss and hear on this subject and other blue economy topics next week on the 9th of November. On the Tuesday. There is a little teaser video that maybe Irene can show, and after that, or throughout that, we're free to close this session. But please, Irene, and thanks a lot again, everyone. Would have been better with the audio, but it's fine as well.
Cariño, ¿cómo se dice parte de la idea? Stripes.
Okay, so this part of it, if you want to see it hear it, actually, you can click on the website link. I put it on the chat. So thank you all very much. We're all quite tired, but it's been very interesting. And again, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.